This man is recognized as the strongest being, standing at the top of the world. Wealth, fame, power, in his eyes are not worth mentioning. The strongest apostle escaped and appeared in the human continent. The reason is to find his future wife. The scene changes. On the snowy plains of the freezing cold, a natural disaster and a magic beast, the ice dragon, has appeared in the snowy plains, leading the demons of the north. In order to protect the safety of the people, the Fram Empire has recruited troops to fight against it. But for this once-in-a-thousand-years beast, mercenaries are nothing more than a death sentence. The battle started right away. Countless mercenaries rushed forward, but they couldn't stand up to the beast. They were killed and wounded in an instant. The scared soldiers began to retreat. I muttered, "The difference in strength is too great. If this goes on, we may not get the commission to go on a date." At that moment a voice came. "Don't panic. Just because the opponent is strong doesn't mean we're going to lose. But if we back down, we're bound to lose." As he said that, he attacked the ice dragon with a powerful blow. The power of the blow seemed to color the sky and the earth red. This person's name is Kagome, one of the 4 ace mages of the Charlotte Flam Empire, known as the Flame Witch, appointed to lead the army in the siege. Seeing that it was Lord Kerr, it seemed that the whole army was instantly boosted in morale. But when the smoke cleared, the mighty ice dragon was unharmed, and it began to build up its strength, slaughtering the soldiers. When the nearby soldiers saw this, they began to throw away their armor and flee in all directions. In an instant, Chloe was the only one left. Chloe stood up slowly, enduring the pain, facing a powerful opponent. Her determination in her eyes did not diminish at all. This scene aroused my curiosity. I instantly came to her back and asked her, "Why don't you run away? It's obvious that you have no chance of winning this fight." Hearing the voice, Kuer was startled. "Who?" Turning her head and seeing me, I replied faintly, "A person who intends to mix some gold coins to go on a date is just that." "But you haven't answered my question," Kagome replied with a firm face. "Escape. I don't have these 2 words in my dictionary. Not now and not in the future." Looking at the girl in front of me, I sighed. Before Kuer could ask what she meant, a wave of cold air that is enough to freeze heaven and earth rushed straight to me. Kerr was so shocked, she could only wait for death to come, but that moment didn't come. When she opened her eyes, she saw the most incredible sight of her life. I saw an unbelievable scene in my life, only to see me with one hand in my pocket, one hand against the upper jaw of the ice dragon. The powerful cold air seems to be blocked in the ice dragon body. I threw the dragon out with one hand, but the ice dragon didn't seem to be convinced. It exuded a terrifying aura and wanted to tear me apart. I muttered, "In our village, children who misbehave will be burned." The magic array in my hand emitted terrifying soul power. In a few seconds, it melted a huge ice dragon. Only a single crystal remained. I turned to Kuer and said, "I saved your life. Do you want to consider dating me at your own expense?" Kagome was stunned that she was able to kill a natural disaster and a magical beast in a single hand. Kagome asked, "Who the hell are you?" After saying that, she fainted. I supported her and said to myself, "I'm just a little guy here to get gold." When Coco woke up, she realized that she was lying under a warm blanket. When she woke up, Acemans, the chief magician of the Flam Empire and the current headmaster of the Royal Academy, asked her how she was doing. Cole was still in a state of shock, shouting about the ice dragon. Acemans reassures her that the ice dragon has been destroyed. "Do you know how the ice dragon died in the end?" But Kagome's memory is blurry. "When we found you, you were already in a coma, but there was an object left at the scene." Curious, Kagome asked what it was. "It's a flame that can never be manipulated by humans, but only by the apostles. The apostles have been in hiding for so long. There must be something we don't know about this battle. In order to avoid involving the apostles and causing panic, the Empire will publicize that you hunted the ice dragon. So take the praise and leave the room." Overnight, the news of Kuer's victory over the ice dragon spread like wildfire across the continent. When I heard the news, I looked miserable. I've gone too far. If my identity is exposed, I'll never see those lovely ladies who treat me like a normal person again. I came to the human world just to find a wife. But now it's time for me to go to another city to hide from the wind. Lovely lady boss, beautiful bar girls, goodbye. Before I could leave, an army found this place and asked for Yao by name. And everyone in the room pointed at me. I was shocked. Had I been discovered? At that moment, the officer said, "I finally found you. You're the only one missing. Come with us to report to the Imperial Royal Academy." After all, the Imperial Royal Academy is the highest educational institution in the Flam Empire. The officer's face sank when he heard the discussion, asking everyone here, Who is like this young man? Who participated in the Battle of the Ice Dragon? It is said that there are very few survivors of that battle left, and he is still able to stand here intact. Do you still have any questions? Everyone was dumbfounded. No one had a word to say. At that moment, a man raised his hand. This person is me. I saw a serious face and asked him, "The school more beautiful girls?" There was a sudden silence. The screen turned to the testing hall. I realized that this place is just heaven. It's really exciting. At this time on the high platform, a soldier inquired, "Lord Acemans, you want to provide those mercenaries who have no strength with the opportunity to further their training?" Acemans smiled a little deeply. "Looking at my back," he said, "give the young people some opportunities. There may be unexpected gains." At this time, a voice came from the hall. "The entrance examination will begin soon. I hope everyone here can survive successfully." At that moment, many magic formations appeared in the hall. When they heard the word survive, the nearby students still didn't understand what was going on. A high-level flame demon wolf was slowly approaching. The nearby students were already terrified. Looking at the frightened faces of the nearby students made me sigh. This kind of fish is worth making a fuss over. It's really disdainful. The nearby students have already started to cast spells, but after a burst of attacks, the flaming demon wolf was unharmed and started attacking the nearby students. Looking at the attacking flame demon wolf, the young lady couldn't stop trembling in fear. Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't expect the academy to be serious. When the nearby students saw the scene, they started to flee in all directions. But I was speechless. Just like that, at that moment, a man stood out. "If we run away, we'll only be used as a torch." As he spoke, he released a wind chain to trap the flaming demon wolf. He commanded the rest of the team to attack the wolves. The archery department will block the left flank. The magic department will attack the right flank. The melee department stabilized the front. Under a combined attack, the flame wolves fell one by one. Before they could start cheering, a huge force swept through the entire hall, converging in the vortex. Unexpectedly, the flame demon wolves actually merged together and spat out flaming bombs, attacking the entire hall. At that moment, an attack flew towards me. Looking at such a weak move, I muttered, "I really don't want to dodge it, but I can't be too high profile in this situation." Just when I was torn, a voice came out, "Be careful." I saw a lovely young lady pushing me away. After the attack dispersed, she asked me how I was doing. At this moment, I was blushing and didn't know how to answer. But the flaming demon wolf's attack continued. Miss hurriedly stood up and said sweetly, "Next time, don't daze off in the middle of a battle. Leave it to me." Looking at the young lady's figure, it's really hard to resist. I covered my mouth and laughed softly. Is this what it feels like to have your heart moved? Have you ever seen such a sweet girl? In order to save me, she not only risked her life, but also asked me how I was doing, and told me not to be silly in the middle of the battle. She even stood in front of me and said, "I'll take care of this." Looking at her back, is this what it feels like to have your heart moved? At this moment, she was still attacking the demon wolf. Her spells kept attacking the demon wolf. Then she raised her left hand, and a white magic formation appeared in the center of her palm. And then a sharp cold wind blew away the ice flowers and headed straight towards the direction of the demon wolf. At a time even the flames of the flaming demon wolf also become dim, but this attack did not defeat the monster. Instead, it enraged him and made him even more furious. "Now!" the girl shouted, and her spells kept attacking the demon wolf. However, this attack still couldn't hurt the wolf. The flaming wolf couldn't stop roaring. The nearby students also joined the battle, and the students were united like never before. At this moment, the young lady said that if we could help to delay it for a while, he could block the movement of the demonic wolf. Upon hearing this, countless magical spells hit the demonic wolf's body. Ice hammers, stones, wind blades, all of which made the demonic wolf unable to move for a while. Although it was not able to defeat the demon wolf, but it bought time for the young lady. Demon wolf swung his claws, and then finished off the students who rushed up to him. Knowing that the girl was the mastermind, the wolf roared and ran straight towards her. The young lady jumped to the top of the wolf and unleashed a magic spell. Magic formations appeared under the wolf's feet and above it. The wolf was still struggling, but it was too late. Miss has already released a double activation formation. The four paws of the wolf that are not wrapped in flames have been frozen in place by cold ice. The magic formation in the sky has been drawn successfully. From the magic formation, Chains are coming out and rushing towards the demon wolf. The demonic wolf was directly bound. No matter how much he struggled, it was useless. Seeing this, all the students nearby breathed a sigh of relief. I don't think there's any problem. I'll definitely talk to this young lady after the test is over. Just as I was masturbating in my mind, imagining a good time in the evening, a figure struck in the dark. A fire attack went straight to the demonic wolf, breaking through the young lady's magic formation. At that moment, the young girl realized that something was wrong, but it was too late now. She had already used up her strength and couldn't move. At that moment, the wolf's bloody mouth, which was wrapped in flames, was already swooping towards the girl. But just in the nick of time, a wall of wind formed by a powerful updraft unexpectedly appeared between the demon wolf and the young girl. The strong wind blew so much that the young lady couldn't even open her eyes. The young lady slightly opened one eye and looked at the person who cast the spell. The person who created the wind wall was the young blonde who could block the flames with his own magic. He directly blocked all the attacks. This wall of wind isn't even a beginner's magic, right? All the students around were shocked by this powerful wall of wind. Everyone in the room thought that the girl must have been saved, because this wall of wind definitely had the ability to bounce objects close to it. Seeing this scene, I just want to say, this person seems to have a bad brain. The wind is not strong enough, but it will fuel the fire. At this moment, the demon wolf is still slowly approaching Miss. At this moment, Miss's magic power hasn't recovered yet. I'm afraid it won't take more than a second for the wolf to bite the girl's white throat. When I saw this, I realized that it was my chance to show my skills. I slid my shovel close to the young lady, and then protected her. The girl's eyes were wide open, not knowing what to do. I took her by the shoulders. I took her in my arms and said, "Don't be afraid, my lovely sister. Wild dogs will be quiet if you kick them." As I said that, I kicked it, and it flew away with a strong force. The devil wolf was kicked into the wall, unable to move. Looking at the young lady in my arms, I think I'm going to be charmed now, but the tears in her eyes made me feel confused. Did I hurt you when I kicked the wild dog just now? Miss said, "No, I'm fine. Let go of your hand. Don't grab it again." A soft and warm touch was transmitted from my palm into my brain. It was a sacred object that I had never touched before. Soft and elastic. It was soft and elastic, firm and tender, and even if I encountered any trouble, it seemed that if I buried my face in it, I would be able to get sublimely relieved. Thinking of this, I hastily loosened my hand and explained, sorry, I didn't mean to. I was too comfortable for a moment. I didn't control my hand." The young girl red-faced did not say anything. You know now is in front of more than 30 people, plus 4 wolves were touched by you all. Seeing us in close contact, the students were talking, and the noise was endless. At that moment, the onlookers cursed at me. "Scum, how dare you take advantage of the crisis to molest the goddess?" "All right, everyone be quiet. The test is over," said a woman. One of the students asked the woman who she was. "Vice Principal Claire," said the woman. One of the boys asked, "Vice Chancellor, what's going on here?" The woman just spoke indifferently and asked what he was referring to. At this time the yellow-haired teenager stood out, pointing at the person lying down and loudly reprimanded. "Can the test be so dangerous? Do you know that a lot of people?" Before he finished speaking, Claire laughed coldly. Between the body of the person he pointed at, a little golden light appeared. The people who were lying down were turned into a channel of energy, which finally converged in Claire's hand. They turned into cards. Claire laughed and said, "What do you think happened to a lot of people?" Yellow Hair realized that it was an illusion. The surrounding discussion actually is the illusion of the puppet. Rumor has it that Claire Title is a magician, good at using magic to drive the object. I did not think that these are fake. Claire continued, "Now that I understand, I won't say any more. First of all, congratulations to everyone present for being selected into the ace class of the Royal Academy of the Flam Empire." The surrounding students discussed. "I heard that all the royal aces are taught by the royal magician himself. I wonder which lord is coming to take us this year." I pricked up my ears and secretly listened. Hearing this, my face flushed, secretly thinking, will the teacher be another cute young lady? Claire went on to say, "This year's ace was led by..." At this point, her words were stuttered, and I, seeing the so-called teacher, couldn't help but freeze. Claire pointed at someone and introduced her. "She will be in charge of the next class. That's Chloe. Charlotte, the wizard." "Chloe? Is that Chloe Charlotte?" "Charlotte. Oh my god, the flame witch, the hero who hunted the ice dragon." The students who hadn't seen Kagome before looked surprised, and no one dared to say anything. After introducing Kagome to the crowd, the vice headmaster waved his hand and left. Looking at the excited students, I can only hope that I won't be found out. Kagome said that the test is over, and that we'll meet tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. in the fighting arena for the actual fight. If there are no other questions, we'll be dismissed. At that moment, the yellow-haired boy raised a question. Please wait a moment. Kagome didn't reply, but glared at the student with a very serious expression, as if she was very unhappy that someone had called out to her like that. If we enter this because of strength, then pointing at me, she said, then why does this guy get in too? When I heard this, I was in a cold sweat. I must be calm at this time. Kagome also asked, what's wrong with him? This guy is simply the fifth wolf on the field, or the kind of horny. In addition to taking the opportunity to molest the goddess, I have not seen him do anything, simply hateful to the extreme. Hearing this, the young lady hurriedly explained for me. No, he came to help, just accidentally. Hearing the words of the young lady, one of the students showed an expression of infatuation. Really kind goddess, ah. However, usually what you fear comes to you. Core at this time even walked towards you step by step. Seeing Chloe slowly approaching me, the young lady was worried, and I was scared out of my wits. I had already blurred her memory of me. She shouldn't have recognized me. Finally, Kagome came to me. Kagome stared at me and said, did we meet me somewhere? I waved my hands and said, how can that be? It's probably because my face is too popular. But you've got it all wrong, but half believing, although you say a bit of truth, but you are sure that you really have not seen it. I continued to explain. Yes, I'm sure. I've seen such a lovely girl like you before. I'm sure I'll remember. When the people nearby saw me flirting with Coeur, they all looked indignant. Coeur also blushed. Okay, I decided to temporarily integrate him into the ace class. Moreover, the previous girl had already explained for him, daring to molest a girl in front of the flame demon wolf. This kind of guts is already beyond the ordinary people. Hearing Kagome's compliments made my face light up. Coeur continued, of course, if any of you are dissatisfied with my decision, you can transfer to another class by yourself. Hearing this, the people in the neighborhood were indignant, but didn't dare say anything. However, when Yellow Hair on the side heard this, he gnashed his teeth in anger. In the late night after the entrance test, there was only one room in the school above the tower that was still lit up. Have the candidates for the ace class been decided this time? Aceman stood beside the fireplace, and looked at Claire and Kerr with his usual kind gaze. Teacher, there are 32 students in the ace class. 12 of them are young adventurers who have participated in the ice dragon slaying quest. Kerr answered Aceman's question in a very respectful manner. Acemans then asked what happened in today's test. Claire said, Lord Acemans, there was a student who was able to knock the flame demon wolf away from the test, but the point is that we only saw him appear in front of the demon wolf, and then in the next second, the demon wolf flew away as if its body was out of control. If it was just a flyaway, it could have been the use of natural magic, but is it really that simple? Kagome was thinking about it. You don't need to think about the matter of the apostle. It's getting late. Let's go home early. Claire and Kagome bowed to Acemans and walked out of the headmaster's office. After the door closed, the room was silent. Acemans was the only one left in the room. He slowly opened the drawer. Inside the drawer was the vial containing the hellfire. At that moment, Acemans took out the jade and looked at it for a long time, which eventually turned into a sigh. The next morning, according to Kagome's request, I woke up early and prepared to gather at the west side of the school's playground. I was barely able to walk down the road with my sleepy mind. I bumped into that cute girl from yesterday. Looking at her, I thought to myself, this is a good opportunity to get close to her. Thinking of this, I made up my mind and ran towards her. Looking at her attractive body, I left my mouth watering. In an instant, a pair of attractive balls were displayed in front of me, only to see the young lady make a lovely turn, almost making me die in place. The young lady ruffled her hair and asked softly, may I ask what's the matter? This makes me blush with a burst of shame and fire, lightly coughing twice to ease the embarrassment. That yesterday's test I did not mean it. Hearing this, Miss Shun instantly blushed. The two took the blame for each other. A sweet, eventually ended in a sweet smile from the young lady. Miss called Aisha, very nice name. Looking at her smile, I immediately conjured up an alluring picture. The pretty girl was lying on her side on the red sofa, and I took a paintbrush to record this beautiful scene on paper. Then I walked and chatted with her. This warm scene was seen by a man who held a grudge. Yellow Hair gritted his teeth and held a grudge. The students arrived at the playground one after another. Coeur introduced today's practical course. She snapped her fingers. A magic formation less than 2 meters in diameter instantly unfolded beside her. Then a red-colored tiger with flickering flames at its tail tip jumped out of the magic formation. Yan Hu! A student with glasses immediately called out the name of this summoned beast. We want 31 of us to deal with an inferno tiger? That's underestimating us, said Yellow Hair. Kagome said lightly, did I say that you would be the ones to deal with it together? The moment these words were spoken, 15 identical magic formations appeared behind her, and in the light of the magic formations, the one that appeared was no other than the inferno tiger. This afternoon's actual combat class was to defeat a tiger in a group of 2, and those who didn't pass the class would have to copy the content of this morning's textbook 100 times. Course words were dumbfounded by all the students. The morning's tactical theory was a whole 12 pages of content. I opened the lottery paper with shaky hands. Poor me. I'm not in Elsa's group. At that moment, a person's footsteps approached Elsa. Elsa froze when she saw the person walking towards her. Kyle put his right hand on his chest and bowed to Elsa. In front of Elsa, Kyle showed the manners that a nobleman should have. However, Aisha did not reply. Normally Aisha's character is very shy. However, Aisha's expression at this time in Kyle's eyes, but like because of shyness and do not dare to speak like. In order to leave a handsome image for Aisha, Kyle said that he could do it alone. At this moment, Aisha, who had not said anything, finally spoke up. Are you going to take on Yen Hu alone? Kyle thought that Aisha was worried about him, so he was even more pleased with himself. As a summoned beast capable of sensing magic power, Yen Hu naturally sensed Kyle's steadily rising magic power. The tiger carefully stared at Kyle, then slowly stacked the pace, set up an attack stance. Looking at the inflamed tiger in front of him, Kyle was contemptuous, only to see him stretch out his palm. Before the tiger got close to him, he unleashed the Wind Attribute primary attack magic Wind Blade on the tiger. However, this primary magic had the power of an intermediate magic. Kagome knew that this was the magic that Kyle had inherited as the son of a duke's family, but Yen Hu was not that easy to deal with. Yen Hu jumped sideways and escaped from the attack range of the wind blade. The tiger's mouth was filled with burning flames. Kyle raised his right hand and used the magic power of wind magic to compress the air around his palm in a split second. The two attacks hit each other, and when the air bomb and the flames collided, flames shot out in all directions. A powerful aura ravaged the entire venue. The entire hall was immediately enveloped by the explosion of light. The flames lit up the surroundings. The wind was blowing furiously. The other students couldn't open their eyes because of the aura. Just when Kyle thought he was winning, Kyle looked back at Aisha and smiled in order to give her a handsome image. He exposed his back to Yen Hu completely. Aisha saw the scene and clenched her small hand. She hurriedly exclaimed, "Be careful of your back." Yellow Hair saw the scene and turned back in a hurry, only to see Yen Hu's bloody mouth wrapped in flames, once again aimed at Kyle. Only this time, it was at an extremely close distance. Kyle was unable to dodge. Look out! It's a ferocious tiger. However, he met me today. He can only meow in front of me, but not in front of others. At this time, a girl screamed loudly. Yellow Hair, who thought he had defeated the tiger, looked back. The tiger pounced on him from behind. Kyle couldn't dodge and was knocked to the ground by the tiger. Yen Hu then stored up strength and attacked Kyle's head. Horrible flames raging. The surrounding students also showed a worried expression and asked Miss Kerr if Kyle would be able to survive. Teacher Kerr was pondering with her hand on her chin, and didn't answer. At that moment, the fire in the field rose up and lit up the whole training ground. At that moment, Yen Hu's eyes widened. He let out a roar and a look of horror, but in the end, his attack was parried by Kyle, and he punched him to the ground. Kyle's face was a mess, and some of his clothes had been burned off, but he was still in one piece. He couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth, thinking that this little girl, Elsa, must have been charmed by herself by now. With this in mind, he walked towards Elsa and couldn't help but show off to her. How about it? Our team should be the first to complete the mission easily, right? However, Kagome's next words caused a painful sensation on Kyle's cheeks. Kagome told them that they were the second team to complete the quota, and that it was now free time, so they could continue to practice or go for a rest. This caused Kyle to be startled and bellowed, "No way! There can't be anyone faster than me. This must be a mistake." Kyle said, "There's no mistake. You're the second team to finish," and pointed to the first team to finish. The crowd followed the gaze of Kagome's finger and looked at it. They saw a huge tiger rolling around on the ground, being cute and cuddly. At this moment, the tiger was in the form of a kitten, and was behaving in front of me and the ladies, and at the side of the cat sucking. Not right, the people sucking on the tiger were me and Eggle, who were both obsessed with it. It was 15 minutes ago. I was still feeling sad that I hadn't teamed up with Aisha. A white-haired girl found me and greeted me. I just looked at her blankly and asked her what she was doing. She called herself Eggle. She drew number 7, just like me. I was still reeling from the pain of not being teamed up with Elsa. The young lady was furious, but all I could think about was Elsa. My behavior annoyed Eggle. She grabbed her weapon. She jumped up and hit me with her axe. I didn't seem to notice. The axe was about to fall, but I just raised my hand. I just raised my hand and caught her axe with 2 fingers. I said lightly that I was listening. The girl gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. She told me to stay here and not to cause her any trouble. After saying that, she turned around and left, stating that she could defeat Yan-Hu by herself. Looking at her back, I was worried. After that, she jumped and attacked the tiger. She attacked the tiger with a huge axe. Eggle's speed is still not as fast as Yan-Hu's. The tiger deftly dodged the attack. The young lady's eyes stared. She gripped the weapon in her hand. She slammed into the ground. Then she kicked at Yan-Hu with a sliding shovel. Although the kick hit, power tiger poison was not harmed by Yan-Hu. Instead, it was wrapped around Yan-Hu's small feet by Yan-Hu's attack. The girl was suddenly filled with panic, but she was thrown up by Yan-Hu with force. She landed heavily on the ground, and her axe also fell to the side. Looks like she was badly hurt. Taking advantage of this moment, Yan-Hu pounced on Eggle at once. Aegir saw that it was too late to escape. With great effort, he picked up the giant axe and put it up. The long iron bar of the axe handle blocked the tiger's bloody mouth. Eggle desperately tried to resist, but he did his best. But Yan-Hu is a fire attribute summoned beast. How could it be blocked by this mere axe handle in front of her? Seeing Yan-Hu being so aggressive towards Sis, it made me extremely annoyed. However, the girl's body couldn't stop trembling under Yan-Hu's attack. How can you be so mean to a sister? Kitten. Yan-Hu froze as he was subdued by my aura, only to see me staring at Yan-Hu who was bullying the sister. Eggle's face turned pale, and she could only let Yan-Hu kill her. However, the ferocious Yan-Hu in 1 second, but the next second, it became a cute and cuddly tiger. The girl was stunned. Is this thing still a tiger? Kur explained that the strongest way to defeat magical beasts is to domesticate them. Looking at such a kind tiger, Aisha also liked to rub her little hands. This makes the side of Kyle is not happy. Eyes gloomy, he glared at me, who was teasing the tiger with the 2 beauties. Seeing such a big cat that was constantly asking to be petted, Eggle also petted it together. At that moment, a man walked by. Eggle looked towards him. It turned out to be Kyle, who came over and taunted him, saying that he had come across a loved one's inferno, and had completed the task so easily. When this remark was made, there was also a lot of talk in the neighborhood. After all, no one wants to admit that someone else is good. Seeing that this person is still not dead, I said softly, not by luck, it is by my natural magic, taming the beast. The people around us also let out a gasp of surprise. Kyle continued to taunt him. I've never heard of this kind of magic, so I'm going to follow the basic law. If that's the case, just watch me. All around us, the tigers are raising their heads. I'm standing right in the middle of the tigers. The people around me didn't know what I was going to do. I just gave them a look. All the tigers were defeated, as if they were all subordinate to me. I stood in the middle of the field, like an emperor. I looked around me coldly. Kyle was gritting his teeth, his face full of disbelief. Everyone in the neighborhood stared in disbelief. Eggle looked at me with admiration. At this time, Kur appeared. She interrupted this matter. It ends here. With a wave of her hand, she created a magic formation in her hand. Then she took back all the tigers on the field. She asked me if I had registered my natural magic when I entered the school. I pretended to be stupid, but no one asked me. Kegome explained that everyone was free to go about their business. After that, Kegome left and went to the teaching room. Looking at the departing Chloe, I breathed a sigh of relief. It's a good thing I've read human novels before. The pressure of the instant release of natural magic should not have been detected by Kur. The scene changes. At this time I am chatting with Aisha and Aegir, but it makes the face of Kyle in the back gloomy. You have this kind of talent magic. No wonder the magic wolves in the entrance test didn't lay a hand on you. Hearing this, there was also a lot of talk in the neighborhood. I thought to myself, this yellow hair is going to start messing up again. He's probably saying that I intentionally controlled the demonic wolf, and then waited for the opportunity to molest Aisha. This makes me feel confused. Human imagination is too rich nowadays. Luckily, Aisha and Eggle spoke up for me. When the students around us heard this, they didn't continue to speak. At that time, Elsa also explained that the wind wall could not resist the demonic wolf at that time. Fortunately, I saved her in time. I hope that everyone will not misunderstand it again. When Kyle heard that the wind could no longer withstand it, his face was extremely gloomy. He clenched his fist and smashed it into the ground. This woman must have lied to help him, but at this point no one cares about him anymore. I stated that it's still Aisha who has a good heart that one has to love. Kegome arrived in front of Aceman's office and, knocking lightly on the black wooden door with her hand a few times, Cole excitedly rushed into Aceman's office. Teacher, I found the one who has the gift of animal taming magic, she shouted. As he looked at Kegome, Aceman's also showed a look of surprise prize. What about strength? To what extent can you control the strength of a summoned beast now? I'm not sure yet, but a summoned beast of the flame demon wolf rank can be controlled at once. Kagome answered Aceman's question truthfully. After hearing that, Aceman stroked his goatee while searching for something to do. In that case, it looks like he might be able to help you very soon. The scene changes. I'm chatting with Aisha. Aisha said that the lesson later on seems to be the history of the Elsini continent. I thought to myself, I wonder if it will talk about me blowing up the hanging city. Just then, Kagome came over with a bad feeling. She asked me to go with her to the Judgment Tower. Inside the Tower of Judgment, a statue was erected in various poses. Like a living person, a holy light appeared all around us. Kerr and I went to the center of the field. I asked Kagome what she had brought me here for. Kagome said she had something important to ask me. Then she asked, do you wish to become my flame witch's disciple? I was dumbfounded. Kagome was still thinking that no one would refuse to be the disciple of an imperial ace wizard. I refused without hesitation. At this time, Kagome hadn't reacted yet, so that's good. After reacting, pointing at me, she trembled and said, did you just say the word refuse? I said, yes, I'm here to find a wife, not to serve tea to others. I suddenly thought of something. It seems that there is no rule that a master can't be a disciple's wife. Right. Kur said she didn't want it. That can't be helped. I sighed. I turned around and said, forget it. That made Kagome grit her teeth. Then I said, do you think you can find a wife in your current position? I suggest you think back to what you did for a living before you started school. I turned my head and looked at her. I thought back to when I first came to the human world, thinking back to the high prices of goods, commissions that were less than a writer's hair, 3 gold coins for all your hard work. If I don't have money, will Aisha reject me? No, I can't do that. Looking at my expression, Kur knew she had to win. She continued, as a disciple of my legacy, you will have the right to inherit fame, status, and all of my property. At that moment, flames filled the tower. So I'm going to ask you one last time. Do you wish to become a disciple of my legacy? Charlotte Kerr. I turned my back and looked away. Master Kerr, you think you've convinced me? Then, congratulations, Master Kagome. I say yes. Saying that, I darted towards Kagome. Kagome was shocked when she saw me running towards her, only to see me pounce on Kagome and murmur, Master, I'm counting on you for my meals from now on. Kagome asked me to worship her, and I directly hugged her thighs. Kagome said it was wrong, but what's wrong with hugging a master's leg? At that moment, something strange happened inside the tower. A lot of spiritual energy was pouring into the statue. A mark appeared on my forehead. I didn't understand what was happening. Kur angrily dragged me and said, do you know that when you make a master-disciple pact, a master-disciple mark will appear on the place where their skin meets? I said innocently, you didn't tell me. How would I know? Kur immediately lost her temper, covering her forehead. She helplessly said, really? Anyway, this mark will not normally appear. You do not have nothing to take out. Just good. Hearing this, I said excitedly, Master Kur, so was your mark on your thigh. This caused Kagome to freak out for a while. The scene shifted and there was a lot of talk in the restaurant. Aisha and Egil were also unmotivated to eat, because the Judgment Tower is a place dedicated to judgment or disciplinary purposes. But I didn't do anything wrong. Why did I get arrested? Kyle, who was next to them, mocked. I'm afraid the school found out about that guy's talent for taming animals. I think that lowly pariah named you should have been expelled yesterday. After all, a pariah is a pariah. This made Agir stand up and yell at Kyle, you bastard, what's that bollocks? Kyle still continued to taunt, favoring that kind of pariah. You're just the same thing. This caused Aisha to become dissatisfied. You use talent for taming beasts. Everyone has seen it with their own eyes. The facts are still undecided. Kyle, you'd better pay attention to your words. At that moment, a voice came out. I think I hear someone missing me. I was only gone for one night. You miss me so much. Aisha smiled happily when she saw it was me. Aisha is still so cute today. Egil said, this guy is still so horny. Then she asked, what were you doing at Kyle's place yesterday? Before I could answer, Kyle beat me to it. What else? I must have been fired. Aisha was worried. I said, nothing. I was just called by Master Kerr to make a master-disciple contract. The noisy restaurant instantly fell silent. They all looked incredulous. Seeing that they didn't believe me, I directly released my seal to prove that I wasn't panicking. And Kyle is not happy. Even if you really have the gift of beast-taming magic, if you did not run into the magic wolf, you got into the ace class. Then he sneered, why don't you have a match with me? Before I could say anything, Aisha defended me. Yao has this kind of talent magic. Entering the ace class would be a death sentence. Before he finished speaking, Kyle did not speak of martial arts and directly struck out. He cut off a section of Aisha's hair. This made me extremely angry. When I saw that Aisha was fine, I let go of my heart, looked at Kyle and said with a smile, "Try it. It's okay." I saw my eyes glowing red. "I hope Mr. Kyle will be gentle with his hands." Kyle said, "Come up with your best moves, and if you lose, you're out of the class." This Kyle is really despicable. Agur clenched his fists. Everyone knows that Yao's talent is animal taming, and there are no magical hands on the field. Aisha is getting worried too. "This is not fair to you at all. I'm the only one who's confident." Kyle-san looks confident. At this moment, Kyle still doesn't understand who he's facing. Kyle drew a sword directly from the void. At the sight of this sword, Aisha began to get nervous. Legend has it that the ancestors of the Paulette family had been gifted by the Elemental King with countless crystal treasures, but one of the rarest treasures was a divine sword. If I'm not mistaken, that sword was called the Green Sylph. "It's an interesting sword," I muttered. "I'll tell you what, if I lose, I'll drop out of school, not to mention the class. But if I win, the sword is mine." This directly shocked Kyle. After all, it's an ancestral heirloom. Seeing that Kyle hesitated, he continued to add more fire and showed a harmless smile. Mr. Kyle can't think that he will lose, right? At this time, Kyle gritted his teeth, but he was so confident in his own strength that he finally agreed. He even said in a hypocritical manner, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. There are no magical beasts on the field that can help you block. Don't beg for mercy later." After that, he started to build up his strength, and the sacred light from the divine sword was raging. I didn't expect the sword to perform well, I muttered. Aisha and Egil were staring nervously at the battle, only to hear Kyle let out a loud cry. "The wind judgment." The whole person flew and slashed at me. I just faintly reached out my hand. Even though the attack was so rampant, it couldn't advance even a little bit. Kyle, who saw this scene, had already begun to doubt his life. I didn't even give him time to react. I took the sword away directly and stroked it. "Lord Kyle, you are so generous to give me such a good weapon." "Thank you." This made Kyle angry but not dare, only to stand in place foolishly. At this moment, seeing that I was fine, Aisha also shouted happily. "This reminds me of what happened just now." My eyes were glowing red. "Let's forget about the attack you made on Aisha." Before Kyle could react, I moved directly in front of him. I pushed him lightly, but it was a devastating blow to Kyle. It sent him flying backwards, spitting blood. It smashed the wall to pieces. This terrifying strength was beyond Aisha and Agur's understanding. Looking at the dying Kyle, I said faintly, "That's all there is to it." Kyle was trembling. His eyes were full of resentment. Seeing that the battle was over from afar, Aisha and Egil excitedly ran over to me. I was praised by both of them. Even with my thick skin, I blushed. Egil suggested that we should go out for a big meal to celebrate. As a foodie, my eyes were glowing. Kyle, on the other hand, was in a worse situation. If his father finds out that he lost Excalibur as a bet, then he would die a horrible death thinking of this. He couldn't help but shout, "No! This sword can't be given to you here." Kyle was going to cheat, and Aisha was the first to say no. That said, if you have such a girlfriend, what more could a man ask for? At this moment, Kyle was still talking tough, saying that he must have played some trick again, and to be fair, he had to start all over again. I immediately refused such a shameless request. Kyle saw that softness was not enough, so he was ready to play hardball. "If you don't give it back, you won't be able to get him out of the arena." And he started to build up his strength in his hands. A riot broke out in the neighborhood. Seeing that Kyle couldn't afford to lose, I started to build up my power, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of my mouth, ready to end this matter directly. At that moment, the Excalibur in my hand flickered with light. It attracted my attention. At this time, Kyle hadn't realized the seriousness of the matter. "Obediently return my sword, and I'll spare you all." I laughed coldly. "So what if I don't give it back? Then you'll all die here." Then I unleashed my attack. The winds of riot. Countless winds of riot rushed towards several people. At that moment, a mysterious force directly resisted the attack, and began to absorb the surrounding aura. In front of their shocked eyes, the divine sword finally transformed into a beautiful girl. The girl kneeled down to the right. "I am the sword of the wind in the hands of the Elemental King. I pay my respects to my master." Can you believe that such a cute girl is actually a sword? And she's kneeling on one knee to be my master. According to the bet, Sylph belongs to me now. She asked me what I wanted. The two sisters beside me also expressed their surprise. A sword spirit. No wonder this sword is known as the most precious treasure in the rumors. I coughed and asked her to stand up first. Sylph nodded her head. Kyle next to her couldn't stop trembling when he saw that she was actually actually so obedient. I am your master, he shouted. If you had shown the power of the sword spirit earlier, how could I have lost to that bitch? I now order you to return to my side immediately. Such shameless behavior is really despicable. I asked, Sylph, do you want to go back? Sylph shook her head and said firmly, no. Firstly, if you bet on Sylph, you'll lose your status as a holder. What's more, the old owner lost the match, so Sylph's owner will naturally change to the winner of the match. Secondly, the power of the holder determines whether or not I submit. Hearing this, Kyle was incredulous. I continued, now that Sylph has made it so clear, I advise Lord Kyle not to make a fool out of himself. Then I touched Sylph. I'm sorry, I took the liberty of treating you as a betting house. Is Sylph willing to assist me in the future? Sylph's face was blushing, and she said yes with a sweet smile. At this time, Kyle's face was cloudy as not just underestimating me. Then I will prove to you now. After saying that, only the sword hand began to accumulate power. A terrifying spiritual energy emanated from his body, and it continued to expand. At this moment, Kyle had already fallen into madness. The powerful spiritual energy was ravaging the whole arena. A fiery red phoenix rose up to the sky. If this continues, I'm afraid the entire arena will be razed to the ground. I said calmly, don't worry about me. Before I finished speaking, I saw a pair of small hands on my hand. Sylph said with a serious face, Master, please use me. I nodded with a smile. Then Sylph turned into Excalibur. Looking at the phoenix that came at me, I broke it with a single blow. True men never look back at explosions, and my charming back shadow. I left a deep impression on Aisha and Egil's hearts. Kyle was lying on the ground, thinking, it's over. The scene changes and the group has arrived at the restaurant. There are all kinds of food on the table. I feel like I've got a chance to show off. I asked Aisha, do you know how the food should be eaten? Is it the best? Aisha replied seriously. Is it to eat it while it's hot? I said gently, no, it's for me to feed you. Such a sweet reply directly made Aisha blush with love. The scene changes. The vice headmaster Claire murmured. It learned about Excalibur from the little man on the table, and instructed the paper man to inform Kegome and Lord Amaniz to see what to do about it. Even though Sylph had lost, Excalibur had given birth to the Sword Order. I'm afraid the Paulette family won't give up easily. The scene changes, and I'm lying in bed. I'm thinking that Elsa is still so lovely and gentle today. Let her wear a maid's outfit and gently say, Master, are you hungry? I've cooked a love meal today. The more I thought about it, the more excited I became, and I rolled around in excitement, mumbling about Aisha. At that moment, a small green head poked out. Looks like the owner is happy. Good lord, that straight away gave me a fright. Sylph had a resigned look on her face. Sorry, because she suddenly sensed a violent fluctuation in her master's mood. So she came out without permission. I touched Sylph and said gently, it's fine, next time tell me before you turn into human form. Sylph inquired curiously, then why is master so excited about it? I shook my head. You're still young and don't understand. It's a kind of joy that feels the coming of spring, stemming from the restlessness of the heart. Sylph's eyes lit up. Sounds a lot like the physical needs I know of. I nodded slowly. It's almost the same thing. At that moment Sylph blushed and tugged on my leg. I wondered if I could help my master with this difficult need. I was stunned. I said it wasn't a good idea, but Sylph said it was Sylph's duty to help her master. I coughed lightly twice to ease the embarrassment since you're sincerely asking for it. I'll reluctantly let you help out a little, only to see a pair of scissors manifest in her hand. It will hurt a bit. Don't be afraid, master. I will be very gentle. I was so scared that I directly kneeled down and cowed out I'm sorry. I was wrong. The scene changes. At this moment Kegome is looking at Egil's resume, curious about Agir's identity, then looking at Yu's resume. This guy doesn't even know how he won today. Never mind. I'll teach him a lesson tomorrow. Then I went to bed. The next morning, I was called by Master Kegome. Looking at his gloomy face, I was panicked. It seems that yesterday's big announcement and the contract with Master Core was exposed. Luckily, I was able to talk my way out of it, but it's the Excalibur that's the problem. Yellowhair's family is a great noble. Yellowhair was the first to initiate the duel, and you were only a passive participant. But you not only injured Yellowhair, you also abducted the other family's sacred weapon. Yellowhair's family didn't kill you directly, so you've already given the Royal Academy face. I've just taken you on as my disciple, and you're causing trouble everywhere, and I have to wipe your arse for you, but you'll have to face the punishment of not stepping out of your room until you've finished reading this introduction to magic. Core is afraid I'll cause trouble. She won't let me call her master. I said, do you want me to change my name to wife? Before I could be happy, a thick book hit me on the head, only to see Core said with a gloomy face, what did you say just now? I didn't hear you clearly. Cough cough. Nothing. Then I'd better call master. Core finished her sentence and hurriedly went to look for the headmaster. The headmaster had already received the news, and it wasn't impossible to solve the problem. However, the yellow hair family has one condition: your master and I must attend the magic conference, although we know that the other side will definitely do something. But this is the only chance to solve this matter. Kur can only reluctantly agree to it. At this time, I still don't know that I've been sold. I was working hard to memorize the magic primer, hoping to be unsealed soon. Sylph stared at me. This made me a bit strange. What's wrong? Sylph shook his head, without understanding. Obviously the master is so powerful, why didn't he say it out loud? This made me fall into deep thought. When a person is strong to a certain point, ordinary people are only in awe of you. They don't dare to get close to you at all. The more you gain, the more you lose. She then asked, Master, don't you have any companions? My companions are all traveling. I don't know what they are doing now, but it's not bad to be an ordinary person like everyone else. Sylph thought to herself, Master, do you have any misconceptions about ordinary people? The scene changes. The students are discussing. I heard that the flame witch has taken on a disciple. That's not a disciple. They're clearly a couple. A couple. But I saw it in the restaurant. The master and disciple engraving on his head. You don't get it. Only couples who are madly in love would engrave the engraving on their head. These days I heard that they were always dating and not attending classes. Hearing these words, Aisha fell into a deep thought. The sadness was on her cute face. It was evening. Chloe had brought me dinner in case I was hungry, and was worried about me. I forgot to unlock the entry and exit spell. I don't know how this stupid apprentice learned it. Then she unlocked the door. After I opened the door, I even said with concern, How's the book? I've brought you some food. Before she finished speaking, the scene in front of her eyes made Kur stupefied. From the outside, there was a dazzling light and a buzzing sound. The scene came to the house. My mother is wiping your arse, but you are enjoying yourself here, teaching you how to behave in minutes. At this moment, I obediently knelt on the ground, muttering, I'm sorry, master, I won't dare to be lazy next time. Sylph also introduced herself. Seeing such a cute little loli, even Kier couldn't resist it. I couldn't help but stare at her. She's so cute. Coco coughed lightly to ease the embarrassment, and then informed me that I would be attending the Imperial Capital Magic Exchange Conference next week. I just wanted to stay put. I didn't want to go anywhere. However, I was directly educated by Sylph. Seeing my expression of hopelessness, Kerr explained that the yellow hair family is powerful, and that if we want to resolve the matter of Excalibur, we'll have to go there. I'm not afraid of the yellow hair family, but it's not good to be missed. Kagome said, If I refuse, I'm afraid that everyone around me will be harassed, and it seems that this magic conference is going to make an example of me. When I heard this, I laughed lightly. Don't worry, Master Kerr, we don't know who's going to make an example of who. Besides, this matter involves Sylph, so let's reluctantly take a walk and see what they are going to do. The lovely Elsa is worried because she hasn't seen me for a long time. Today, I took Rose to see Elsa and told her how lovely she was. Aisha was so happy in her heart, but on her lips, she still said, Sylph and Kagome-sensei, that's what's cute and charming, right? Cute girls are so cute even when they are jealous. Aisha looked at the departing carriage, her eyes revealing endless sadness. Right at this moment, a black shadow appeared behind Aisha, to which Aisha didn't have any reaction. She just murmured, You're here, Aisha-sama. Now that this school has no decent manpower, I think we can start the mission that the Lord has given you tonight. In addition, I see that the boy called you seems to like you a lot. If the Lord knows about it, he will be angry. Hearing this, big sister Aisha hurriedly turned back and said, Regarding you's matter, I hope you won't report to the Lord and Mother. Please, I beg you. It depends on how well you do this time. Aisha, on the other hand, did not say a word, gripping the corner of her coat tightly with her hands, pursing her lips, tears constantly turning in her eyes. Kagome and Yu's carriage, which was speeding along the specially constructed road, hadn't even traveled half the distance. Kur was sitting opposite Yu, her brows furrowed, her heart calculating whether she could make it on time or not. The main reason for all of this was the stupid apprentice in front of Kagome, who was holding a rubbish bag and vomiting furiously. The scene changes to Capella Manor. The carriage has stopped in front of a very luxurious mansion. The guards standing in front of the mansion naturally knew the Flame Witch's name, so they didn't try to stop her. Ku'er refused the butler's invitation to leave first, and then turned around and walked towards the mansion. Sylph and I went in for a big meal first. Just then, the young lady who just led the way for us was beaten up. I asked you to bring Miss Kerr here. How did you do it? The girl was trying to explain, but the man next to her spoke up first. Yes, Lloyd, I've told you repeatedly. Why don't you remember? When I saw this, I taught Sylph. See, this is called dumping. The man looked back at us both, plates full of food, slightly unkempt clothes, and then he introduces himself in a mildly amicable manner and asks if there's an invitation. When I said no invitation, if you don't have an invitation, please leave now. Sylph was ready to strike when she heard that man's rude words. I hurriedly stopped Sylph and explained, I came here with my master, Kur, so I don't have an invitation. Hearing this, Wendell couldn't believe it. Nonsense. My family Kuer is so beautiful and excellent. How would she accept a guy like you as her disciple? I held back my anger and explained, if you don't believe me, you can ask the butler next to you. He was just at the door to greet me and Master Kur, but the butler didn't dare to admit it for fear of getting angry with him. Wendy shouted, that's enough. You're not worthy of being Kur's disciple. Just then, a voice came. He is indeed my disciple. Just see Wendell, who had been so angry just a moment ago, instantly smiled. So he really is Kur's disciple. Then it was all a misunderstanding just now. So as a token of my apology, let me show Miss Kur this year's magical achievements. I saw Kuer playing with my hand. Then she smiled and said, my fiancé and I can see for ourselves. Master advertised that I was his fiancé, although it was a shield. But now that it's been said, it's far from being true. Wendy has always liked Kur. How could he not expect Kur to be engaged to a civilian, not even agreed to his quest? The butler next to him helped to come up with an idea. Today is an exchange meeting, and celebrities from all walks of life are present to watch. But Chloe didn't have any results to show at the conference, so we can suppress her. Then she summoned the maid to show off her newest potion. Although the flavor is a little bitter, a small sip of this potion can make one's body's spiritual energy reach a state of abundance. It's simply a miraculous medicine. Listening to the comments of others, Wendell smiled from ear to ear. He also said in a conspiratorial manner, right Kuer, I just heard that some people, who have no magical achievements this year, dared to come to the exchange meeting to dilly-dally. It's really disgraceful. The corner of my mouth revealed a cold smile, directly poured the potion on the ground, looking at their angry faces. Oops, I'm sorry. My hands were shaking for a moment. At that moment, Wendell finally couldn't help himself. He felt that I had made a carefully prepared potion. Do you know how many expensive herbs were used in this potion? It's just vanilla powder, dragon snake scales, poisonous fireweed, and pure water from the bottom of the ice field. Right. I can make 10 or 8 bottles of this kind of common potion a day, and you still have the nerve to show it off as a treasure. At this moment, Wendy couldn't believe it. This potion took me a whole month to make, and the effect is excellent. I'd like to see if you can make 10 or 8 bottles for me today, Kur said with some concern. Silly apprentice. Don't mess up, I said lightly. Master, don't worry about it. Just need to trouble Master to help me prepare some things. Kur promised, but also asked curiously, but how do you know this potion materials and practices? Just when I thought I was exposed, Sylph explained when the potion was served. Sylph whispered it to Master. Sylph, as the sword of the elemental throne, can distinguish the materials from the magic elements emanating from the potion. Kegom also believed this statement, but after everything was prepared, the crowd looked at the parsley on the table, the radish, the hepatica, the 300 herbs, and again, the stovetop. They all laughed out loud. They were planning to cook for us. I don't bother with these ignorant people. I start directly. I casually put on my battle robe. I put on my robe and took out a handful of leafy greens and peeled them. Add some turnip and cabbage, ginger, onion and garlic. Then I start stir-frying with a spoon. In just a moment, the flavor of the dish dispersed the aura of the neighborhood. The people present had never seen such a way of refining medicine. At that moment, countless magical powers gathered inside the pot and eventually coalesced. This completely shattered their perceptions. Then it was poured into the bottle. At that moment, a man came forward. I wonder if I have the chance to taste your potion. This person is a master of magic pharmacy in the Madsen Empire, along with Chief Magician Acemans. After receiving permission, Madsen began to taste it, but the taste turned his perception upside down. He couldn't stop trembling, not expecting to see someone make a magic elixir in his lifetime. The magic elixir can increase the spiritual journey geometrically, and it has been lost for nearly 300 years. Madsen replied in a low voice, is correct. And this kind of alchemy agent French so-called do not know what is the secret of it. The old man is also a man of knowledge. Put down the cup, then bent down and bowed. If it is possible, I would like to share half of my assets. I beg you to tell me. I casually refine the magic elixir. Also, someone is willing to exchange half of the assets. I just laughed. Who knows if you are a poor man? Half of the family assets. If there are only 2 or 3 dates, I will not lose a lot of money. Before I could refuse, Wendell made a preemptive move and said he could add more. The whole room was silent immediately. Although Wendell is not the head of the Capella family, his assets are still over 100 million. I scratched my ear and said, but I have no intention of selling it to you. But Wendell said that he would take a cut of the sale of the potion. I'm not short of money, but he's giving me too much. I didn't realize that his family was so rich that half of their fortune contained 3 space rings. Once everything was ready, I taught them the secrets of making elixirs. It turns out that no one in the world can make a spirit potion. It's not the materials, but the equipment used to make it must have a corresponding magic array to absorb the magic elements in the air. The materials only serve as a carrier. After a brief introduction, Wendell understood the principle of it. Wendell didn't expect it to be so simple, which gave him more confidence in the mass production of magic elixirs. But Wendell said there was one more thing. Not long ago, the lava volcano erupted. In the depths of the cave, a rare magical beast, the fire griffin, was found, and it was certain that the griffin was guarding a jade that was burning with fire. That jade must be the legendary treasure of the Oriental continent, so he was ready to cooperate with Kagome. After all, Kagome is a fire mage, so she can do twice as much with half the effort. Kuer's heart moved, seemingly thought of something, said that the jade does not need as long as the Chilin's heart blood. Wendy didn't even think about it and agreed directly. However, I could sense a hint of abnormality in the other party's decisiveness. This trip might not be that simple. The scene changed and the butler asked his question. Wendell used half of his family's fortune to buy the formula that could be passed on, and also told them about the fiery unicorn. Is this not proper? I only promised to take them there, but I didn't say I'd bring them back. This is a perfect plan. The maid led us back to our resting room. I asked Kuer why she didn't want the jade, but the blood of the Chilin. It's because the blood from the Chilin's heart can turn a fire magician's mortal fire into a heavenly fire that can evolve everything. Drinking it is what will allow my natural magic to awaken. I think you've guessed that I took you as my apprentice in the hope that you can help me subdue the fire unicorn successfully. I'm sorry. Was I too selfish? That's a good point indeed. It's quite selfish, but truly selfish people never make choices. Like me, I want the jade and the forest spirit. I want them all. Kagome blushed a little when she heard that. But we're leaving for the volcano the day after tomorrow, and you don't even have any elemental magic yet. So I'm going to make a contract to replenish my magic temporarily, because it takes 2 seals to replenish magic power, and Chloe's mark is on her thigh. Cole pressed me hard against his thigh. After a few operations, it was over. If it were possible, I'd like to hold on to that thigh forever, and I was. I almost fainted from happiness, but to outsiders, it looks like staying in the guest room for a few days, and making strange noises from time to time. So that Wendell, who had always liked Kagome, blushed hard. At that moment, the man next to him interrupted Wendell, who was scolding him angrily. This man is one of the 4 ace mages of Hastan. He was sent by Wendy to deal with me and Kagome. Inside the room at this time, after Kerr's personal tutelage, I had successfully learnt the elemental grinding. I thought to myself, this way I won't be afraid of my hellfire being exposed. The scene shifted and Aisha in the academy got the target of the trip. A few days later, at the foot of the great volcano of Lol, I didn't think that I, being the strongest in the world, would still get seasick. I didn't realize that I'd be stopping at a random location. I didn't realize that there would be a large group of wind lizards, and a high-ranking magician was being chased by the wind lizards. Wendell cursed at the sight. This idiot. I invited you to hunt the Chilin, not to stab the lizard's nest. He was in a panic. He didn't want to become a lizard's feces. This lizard is a great beast, famous for its speed and poison. There are so many of them. It takes time and effort to fight them, and they needed to save their strength before hunting the Chilin, so Wendell told them to retreat. But just then, the man saw an unbelievable scene, only to see the Lizard King lying on top of me, being so sweet and adorable. Wendy was shocked and asked Kuer, "Your fiancé doesn't know this Lizard King, does he?" Kuer hurriedly waved her hand. "How could that be? It's just that his affinity for summoned beasts and magical beasts is just a little bit higher than that of ordinary people, right?" I didn't realize that Kagome knew Versailles. At this point, Wendy also then politely shouting, "Mr. Wright, can you tell them to get out of the way a little bit, so that it is convenient to continue to rush the road?" But I thought of a better way. This group of lizards came at the right time. A rumbling sound was heard. It's quick and convenient to ride on a wind lizard each. It's quick and easy to ride them. Isn't that great? We're even ahead of schedule. When we arrived at the cave, the lizards are getting restless, so there is something in there. But it's none of my business. I just need to keep an eye on Kagome. At that moment, Chloe greeted the group and asked them to go inside. stepping into the cave. Inexplicably, it's a bit depressing. Wendell looked at my back, not realizing that I had such a high affinity for magical beasts. I thought to myself, even if Kegome and I subdue the Qilin, we won't survive the day. When we arrived at the interior, there was a precious jade by the lava, but the magic fluctuation of this jade seems a bit familiar. When Wendell saw that the griffin wasn't there, he was ready to take the jade. Before he could get close, a ball of magma rose up to the sky. He's lucky he wasn't trampled to death by the griffin. In front of him was the rare magical beast, the fire unicorn. The magicians are forming a formation around us. Chloe was worried about my safety, so she told me to stand aside and wait for the right moment to use my taming talent. I think Kor was right. With a beast like the griffin, the pressure I unleashed might be counterproductive. It's not like I can knock the griffin over in front of everyone. As expected, ordinary people aren't that easy to be. The fire griffin presses in step by step with its aura, and the magicians can't sit still any longer. They used a group ice spell, Ice Hearse. They're going to seal the griffin, but they obviously underestimated the Qilin's strength. He shook off his restraints and quickly rushed forward. The magicians were already infected by the spell. They were injured and slowed down. They were in danger of dying. Kegome jumped up and blocked the fire Qilin, giving the others a chance to retreat, but the fire Qilin was clearly superior. After a terrifying collision, Kegome could only retreat for a while. The most important thing is that Jade has been knocked out of the room. The crowd was anxious. They saw it about to fall into the lava. I sighed and leapt out, not realizing that I still had to make the move. Amidst the shocked looks of the crowd, I returned safely with Baoyu, but I noticed something unusual about Baoyu. He actually had the breath of life on his body. I was about to tell them the real identity of this thing. This is not a precious jade at all. Hands of emptiness suddenly appeared from the back. I was shocked. I could only push Kor away in a hurry. I got caught up in it on purpose to see what the other side had to offer. At that moment, the Kirin was also bound by vines. The surrounding magicians took the opportunity to attack the Kirin. The Kirin was already dying. Deity. What's going on? Wendell's not hiding anything. What's going on? You don't think I'm sincere about working with you, do you? It's not in vain that I hired Lord Void to take care of you. If anything happens to my disciple, you won't be able to leave here alive. If anything happens to my pupil, you won't get out of here alive. At that moment, Hastings stepped out of the void. Unfortunately, I'm afraid your disciple has become a meal for the Void Lord in my realm. Despite her usual bickering, her heart is full of me. Kegome recalls the time she spent with me. She didn't expect me to die in front of his eyes, and her anger filled her body. Then I'll take your lives to pay for it. I'll use the big move, Flame Entanglement. Then he leapt up and rushed towards Asta with hot flames and fury, but when it landed on the door of space, it was swallowed up. The door of space can actually rebound the damage, and reflected it directly back. Kerr was directly injured by its own magic explosion. This is already Kerr's strongest attack. I did not expect to be able to break the other side of the defense. At this moment, Kerr was half kneeling on the ground. A sense of powerlessness filled her whole body. Void magic is a magic excluded from the basic system. Kegome's Red Inferno sword can't control it at all. I advise you to stop struggling unnecessarily, and die obediently. The villain next to her didn't want Kegome to die so easily, and even showed a lewd smile on his face. Is it really over? Kegome's been beaten to a standstill. Moreover, Kegome's red flame sword was unable to restrain Haston, and there was only one way for her to do so. Kegome looked at the injured Kirin, that is to take the blood of the griffin to awaken her natural magic. In response, Haston just laughed. Don't worry, it's just a waste of effort. Drinking the griffin's blood made Kegome's body feel like it was on fire. What a fool! Drinking the blood of the griffin will only burn you alive. But Kegome had faith in Assimilus and didn't believe his teacher would lie to him. You believe that old man? Armus, I see you don't know anything about him, Aston said with a sneer, and with that, he was ready to lead the crowd away. At that moment, a powerful flame surrounded Kegome's body. At this moment, Kegome had already awakened her natural magic. The Lord of all Flames, even though he had awakened his natural magic, he wasn't happy about it. Revenge was his only obsession, and he began to build up his magic power. Asta also wanted to release his void spirit power. Asta wanted to unleash his void spirit power to face Kur's heavenly flame, but he didn't know that he couldn't use it at the critical moment. The Lord of the Void did not respond. Asta was unable to move his body when he saw the huge flaming giant coming. He could only watch as the dragon pounced. He could only resist, and eventually fell to the ground. Although Kur had already obtained the desired talent, but she was not happy at all. At that moment, there was a round of applause. Kegome saw that it was her master. He was about to complain to him. Master, what are you doing here? Acemans walked over and said, It looks like you have awakened the gift of magic. Kegome said, Yes, but I always feel that my teacher is strange. Hastan on the side couldn't help but laugh out loud. Don't you understand? This old bastard, he has been eyeing the day you awakened your natural magic from the very beginning. After all, he is the demon king of predation. The foster father is actually the horrible demon king of plunder. Legend has it that 500 years ago, a monster appeared who was able to take away other people's natural magic and was undefeated for 200 years in the history of mankind. But history records that he disappeared after his battle with the seventh angel, Huzilia. He was rumored to be dead, so how could he be Aceman's teacher? Aceman said faintly, Kegome, you told me that if you awakened your natural magic, you could help me a lot, but that's too much trouble. Why don't I just take your natural magic? Before Kegome could react, Acemans grabbed Kegome and said, but if I hadn't foretold your awakening, child of the flame, you wouldn't think I'd be so kind as to adopt you. Look at you! You're so pathetic. Your only purpose in existence is to awaken your gift of magic for me to take. And with that, he began to loot. At that moment, Kegome couldn't believe that the teacher she had always respected was only using her as a tool. Kegome shed tears of grief and called out to her teacher, and after Acemans had plundered Kegome's gift, he threw it away like a piece of rubbish. Feeling the power of the heavenly flame, he muttered, it's really a good talent. Then there's no use in keeping you. I'm not going to be able to do anything with it at the side. Hastan was trembling. This old undead, after dealing with Kur, I guess it's my turn. Damn it, why isn't the Lord of the Void reacting? Just then, a powerful force collapsed the void. Then I saw Kegome lying next to Acemans. I didn't expect that in just this little bit of time, Kegome would be bullied like this. My face was gloomy. Who did this to me? Acemans didn't hide it either. I did it. Then he kicked Kegome to the side of me. I held back my anger and asked if he had taken Kegome's gift. Yes, but you should be happy for your master. After all, she did her part to help me destroy the apostles. I've worked so hard for so many years. Until today, I finally have both the heavenly flame and the bathing flame. In the future, I will be able to point my sword at the apostles and control 10,000 cities. But before that, I still have to take care of you rubbish. The flaming demon dragon had horrible ice picks sticking out of its body, and slowly closed its eyes and gradually lost consciousness. After plundering the gift magic, Acemans actually tried to destroy the duo in front of him. He slowly raised the fire of heaven to burn in his aging hand. The infinite heavenly fire then quickly attacked them, the huge flames exuberant as if they were waves. I didn't realize that Yuleman was unharmed, and even looked a little pleased with himself. He stretched out his hand and casually shook his longsword. Countless sword shadows swept towards the flames. Yuleman even had time to strike a handsome pose, swinging his longsword with one hand at the old man. Only a strong sword shadow was seen as it struck towards the flames in front of it. A bombardment actually erupted from the center of the flames, while easily splitting the blazing flames in two. The heavenly flame gradually lost consciousness and suddenly gradually showed signs of extinction. Yuleman stood still with a grim expression on his face, seeming to have no feeling for the battle just now. This guy is so strong. Is he really Kegome Charlotte's disciple? How dare you bring out Sylph's power? Who the hell are you? Yawerman didn't bother to answer back. There's a prize for guessing. Old man. He unleashed the energy in his body, and the rubble under his feet actually had a tendency to rise. In an instant he surged forwards, seeming to tear apart the cheeky old man in front of him, his body filled with bloodthirsty killing intent. Acemans was already a little angry at being called an old man, and it was clear that the young man in front of him was completely unaware of his own fate. So he unleashed his gift magic and a magical compass actually appeared. But will the gravel gradually rising from the ground be able to withstand the powerful energy of the old man's compass? After Yuleman switched his skills with a serious expression, the rubble gradually turned into sharp weapons, only to see him swing his longsword in a smooth manner. Countless sword shadows attacked the old man. As expected, the old man was simply unbeatable, and the sword shadow instantly surrounded him and then directly exploded, until after he slowly lowered his longsword, the debris flying about in the air fell in response. But Yuleman didn't stop. He didn't expect him to instantly unleash his skills to slash at the old man again. The old man faced the flying debris and hastily raised his hands to activate the energy shield. He was able to resist Yuleman's stone attack, and even showed an evil smile. Yutan's face was grim, forgetting to tell you who asked and didn't guess. But there's a punishment for that. He said that and he came at me. The moment their energies collided, Acemans, however, felt the young man's powerful oppression. At that moment, the place where they were suddenly exploded, and the scene was actually unprecedentedly shocking. The upper part of the cave was even shattered by the energy, and debris continued to fall downwards. But there was no way to stop them, just let them hit anywhere in the cave. Lord Void weakly covered his arm. I'm afraid the volcano will erupt if this goes on. It's the fault of this idiot, who has now offended the monsters Yao and Acemans. I'm afraid they won't even let him go, so I'd better sneak out while I can. Yui warns the old man in displeasure to give back Kagom's natural magic. Acemans suddenly laughed out loud. After all, the talent taken through pillage simply could not be given back. That's when he picked up the magic bottle. You didn't think that would knock me out, did you? Then you're too naive, I said, and then I crushed the bottle. Is that the legendary hellfire of the apostles? What does that old bastard Acemans want? But there was no time for them to be surprised, as the magma underground gradually spread upwards. You think you can knock me down like this? After all, I'm the headmaster of the Magic Academy. But without waiting for the other party's reply, he had already begun to rapidly absorb the prison fire in his hand, only to see his suddenly filled with power. A small prison fire strangely burned to form the hunting skill. Acemans says it's the most powerful apostolic force ever gathered, and he quickly opened his arms. Let's try it with you guys today. So the hellfire gradually attacked them, and the wounded human's body was actually burning with a fizzling sound. At this moment, a green figure suddenly appeared in front of you, quickly moving forward to resist the hellfire attack, only to see her use the gale barrier to easily block the old man's stolen energy for her master. I didn't realize that her energy was even greater than the old man's, and the stolen hellfire was obviously weakened somewhat. But you gave her an order to take the injured Kagome out of here. But Sylph refused outright. After all, it is my mission to keep my master safe. She was still gritting her teeth when her head was gently stroked by her master's. Don't worry, Sylph, I'm not afraid of a little hellfire. She was momentarily a little stunned, looking up at her tall and powerful master. Suddenly she came to her senses, and with unquestioning trust in her master stated that she would take her at once. The old man didn't realize that there were people who let their weapons run away with the injured and weak in times of crisis. Now that I have the hellfire in my hand, it'll only take a few minutes to kill you. Apparently, when the old man unleashed his prison fire skill, he even felt that he had simply made a move many times over. After all, his energy is so powerful that there is no one who can fight him. After 500 years of living on this earth, I finally freed myself from the shackles of mankind and set out on the path to becoming an apostle. Kriyao is safe and sound in the prison fire. That's not how you use this fire. A larger fire flared in his hand, and he mockingly showed the old man opposite him, only to see him suddenly converge on the old man's prison fire, causing the other to stand still like a fool. You handsomely played with the hellfire in his hand. After all, he wasn't an incredibly fragile human being himself. You have control over the hellfire, but it is too small compared to the power of the apostle. I easily took the hellfire inside me. After all, I'm just a minion myself. More than that, I'd like to know what you're going to pay for what you did to my fiancée. But the old man thought that from the moment he took the gift, he was a dead man in his eyes. Since Yao has the ability to control the hellfire, then we can succeed by seizing his power. So he instantly opened his eyes and used the looting skill. You looked ahead in confusion. What's with this strange feeling? I didn't expect the old man to be quite crazy, to want to draw on the infinite prison flame in the other party's body. But before he had time to be complacent, his eyes suddenly changed in shock. As he drew on the energy of the hellfire, he actually saw the shadow of Yu's previous claim to dominance. Yu smiled helplessly. He even sealed himself for a long time so as not to reveal it. Aceman's entire body was swept with hellfire energy, but there was actually a hint of brokenness in his demeanor. Since you want my power so badly, I'll be a good guy and give it to you. So Yu suddenly smiled evilly. After all, his first seal was about to be unlocked. Sure enough, after he unsealed the seal, his body instantly boiled with hot blood and unlimited energy gushed out. The old man looked at him in surprise, not expecting him to be so deep in his hide. But you didn't even wait for his thoughts. The fearful prison fire quickly impacted towards the old man. After Acemans received a powerful blow, the prison fire inside his body gradually drew out. He looked at his empty energy and his mouth fell open uncontrollably, only to see his body rapidly expanding. But the most unexpected Yao was actually, obviously you didn't want him to say it, his own secrets needed to be kept by the dead. After all, He's just a minion who came to find his wife and mix a few gold coins on the way. Aesmons had long since fallen to the ground, his swollen body actually smashing a large hole in the ground. At that moment, there was also a rumbling from above, as lava mixed with debris fell downwards. After you settled everything, he stood forlornly thinking about something. He suddenly looked up to indicate that it was time to go and round with Sylph, wondering if his wife had woken up yet. But there's a few things I need to take care of before I go to the rounds. You looked at the huge dragon in the deep pit in front of him, with a horrifyingly huge ice pick stuck in its body. He walked forward slowly and stood in front of it with his eyes downcast in thought. Suddenly he stretched out his palm and conjured up a strange boundary, slowly heading towards the dragon. The dragon felt something and slowly opened its eyes, but when it tried to stand up, it fell to the ground. It growled in displeasure, but it was too weak. After all, the dragon hadn't unleashed its full power in the previous battle. I'm afraid that if the force is too strong, it'll hurt the child. The dragon was also shocked that a small human could guess his thoughts. Rolling into the void realm, I found this child inside a fireball. I put it in my space ring, so it's still in good shape. The dragon arched the child slightly and looked at the human in front of him with some emotion. You, however, suddenly laughed, indicating that he understood the giant dragon's meaning. I don't know why you brought the baby here, but it carries the apostle sent with it. It's destined to be with us apostles. Don't worry, dragon, I'll take good care of it. I didn't expect the dragon to close its eyes permanently after hearing his promise. At that moment the volcano began to rumble, as if it was about to spread outside. Sylph, holding the injured Charlotte, looked expectantly into the cave. Sure enough, her master came out, and she was instantly overjoyed. However, she was a little afraid that her master would be hurt and looked at him nervously. You walked up to them and said he was fine. How was Master Kagome? Sylph shook her head. Kagome should have been too tired to fall into a coma and rest. Apparently the volcano was about to erupt and they need to get out of here before they make any plans. It's just that Master has such a strong character. I don't know if she'll be able to accept all this when she wakes up. Kagome is alone inside the hospital as a child, but she hears the nurse across the room gossiping about herself. It's anyone's guess at this point, but it's just pathetic to be left with only such a small child. So you already know who killed your loved ones, right? Kagome looked up at the visitor, who indicated that he shared a common goal. If she wants revenge, then be his apprentice. Kagome doesn't know him at all. The old man hurriedly introduced himself. His name was Aesmons. He was the Imperial Royal Chief Wizard. At that time I really believed in Master. He really wanted to help me get revenge. I didn't realize it was all just plunder, to take away my gift of magic. Aesmons was still praising her at the time. The magic was well learnt. It wasn't worth nurturing her for many years. She's sorry for her parents, and now she can't fulfill the Charlotte family's revenge. After she thought about this clearly, she suddenly opened her eyes slowly but felt so cold. Sylph was the first to realize she was awake, but she was overwhelmed with shock. Master, it's bad. Master Kagome can't sense any magic in her body. You was surprised too. It's all because of that damn old man, and the energy in Kagome's body was actually draining away rapidly. They felt a small-town hotel where the men had left their clothes lying around. It's true that you're using the energy of boundary magic so that it doesn't affect your performance, but just like Sylph said, Kagome couldn't sense any magical energy in her body at all. She's weak and losing energy fast. At this rate, Kagome may never wake up again. Sylph walked in quietly. Master, you should still have magic in you. Master Kagome replenished it for you earlier. This magic can be returned to the master to help her regather her magical power. However, since Master Kagome no longer had any magic power, she couldn't use the engraving for magic transfer. In that case, we can only use the most traditional method of mending magic, the lip-touch mending method, as recorded in the ancient books of mankind, connecting each other physically through the mouth, using mingled saliva as a magical medium. You hurriedly stopped her from reciting further, but for the sake of Master Kagome's return to her magical power. But what about taking advantage of her? Sylph, however, thought that Master Kerr would be more concerned about getting her magic back. It's been a while since her magic was taken away, and it won't help at all if we don't hurry. Even if her life wasn't in danger, would she be able to accept waking up as a normal human being? So you stepped forward with a firm gaze, indicating that he had understood her meaning. Sylph stooped and retreated, intending to guard the door for her master. She then quickly carried out her orders, clanging the door and sealing it shut. You hurriedly picked up Master Kagome. There wasn't much time left after all. No matter what happens after that, I'll be responsible to the end. So he shyly lifted Kagome's chin and moved to kiss it gently. In an instant, the energy energy in the room flew around randomly, but all of it converged into Kagom's body. Kagom's consciousness gradually began to return even after his kisses had delivered the magic. She slowly opened her eyes, but was confused, thinking that she must be in a dream. Although it was said to be warm, Yu was no longer there, and he had indeed failed as a master. Suddenly her eyes widened and she rushed to the slightest hint of something wrong. No, this was not a dream. Sylph stood in dismay at the door. Why was there a strange riot going on inside? She opened the door nervously, only to see her master sitting on his knees with his head hammered into the ground. I only saw Kagom's face reddening, although it is outwardly declared that you are my fiancé. But you can't do this to me. She was still chattering away when she realized that Sylph was quietly scribbling down notes. With a serious look on her face, she stated that she was recording the after effects of her master's kisses. Kagom's face instantly exploded in red, not realizing that a kiss had to be recorded. This isn't kissing. This is first aid. This is mending. Don't record this. And yow! What happened just now is in the past. You'd better forget about it. You looked at the lively master and had to agree with the aggrieved. It wasn't until later that she came back to her senses and slowly put down her teacup. So what happened to Acemans and Wendell? And how did you escape after that? You, on the other hand, stated that it was Sylph's fault for escaping from the vortex. I saw Acemans and the wizard fighting, but the cliff broke while they were fighting. It seems that the wizard should be Hastan. I didn't realize he was quite capable, but it's a good thing I watched the time before and snuck away with Master Kagome. You and Sylph. Kagome hung her head in disappointment. This was a real mess. You suddenly got a little excited. How's your magic and stamina recovered? Kagome quietly gripped the covers, but her expression grew more and more serious. Even with the magic returned by her stupid apprentice, her magic cultivation was now very low. Yu was puzzled and looked back at Master, who was really getting more and more beautiful the more he looked at him. But I didn't think she would, and told him to hurry up and take Sylph out of the way. At this point in the hotel, there's a heated conversation going on, only to see Kagome's face grow more and more somber, insisting that he take Sylph away with him. Kagome and the others stood still, puzzled, asking why exactly, because once the other families, they, knew about the deaths of Acemans and Wendell, then the power of the Empire and the three great families for nearly 100 years will be broken. I'm afraid there's going to be a change of heart within the Empire, and now she's not even a mid-level mage, so following her will definitely be dangerous. But you said he understood, but he rejected her offer outright. She was instantly and immensely angry. Did you hear me or not? Losing the protection of Acemans. There's no way the Paulettes will leave us alone, not to mention all the other families watching. But if he and Sylph leave, what will you do then, Master Kagome? She suddenly hung her head, not knowing how she was going to explain it to her disciple. After all, he's a cripple who can't fight. So say we hear you, but even more so, we won't leave your side, since we can't sneak away together. Let's face it together. Besides, I'm your legacy apprentice and fiancé. How can I leave you alone and run away? Kagome suddenly stormed out, having said not to take her fiancé's business seriously. Sylph cheered her on at this point, saying that she would help them too. Kagome was touched for a moment. Would you guys really go this far for me? But if anything happens to you, I won't care about any of you. You suddenly took out the Kirin's egg, which the Kirin entrusted to me on his deathbed. Kagome, however, looked at it suspiciously. Isn't this thing a treasure jade? In fact, Wendell was wrong. The Cheelan's guardian is not the jade at all, but its egg. So Sylph came forward and suggested that the master should give it a name. You thinks it makes sense. We can't keep calling it a unicorn egg, but calling it the apostle's egg is too blunt, since it's from the Orient. I've heard there's a traditional custom there. A child's name has to be commonplace to make it easy to raise. So let's call it Iron Egg. The griffin's egg is suddenly angry, its body burning with fire. Yao panicked and brought it to me. How could the Iron Egg suddenly burst into flames? It's too hot. Instead, they agreed that it should dislike the name, so Yao changed his name to Erjuzi. I didn't expect it to get angrier, and the fire became bigger and bigger. At this time around the town, late at night, it was incredibly eerie. The man was walking down the street, but he couldn't stop his legs from trembling constantly. They probably didn't expect the Void Lord to be dead, and he could barely move through space. I'm glad I was quick, or I'd have ended up like Acemans. But the news of Wendell's death will fetch a good price. So time passed quickly, and a week later in the hotel, It seems Hastings did escape from the volcano and spread the word about Wendell's death. Strange that he should have said nothing about Acemans, and about them. I don't think he knows that the treasure jade is Scion though. But still, no one should see it. You said he wanted to see the big city and buy some magic recovery potions on the way. So he traveled to the town alone and kept looking around at the beautiful women, only to see him cover his mouth in contentment and snicker. But his look grew more and more shy. You walked pleasantly towards the town center, looking around at the laughing and beautiful girls. It's true that where there are pretty girls, even the air is sweet. That's when he noticed the red door ahead and suddenly saw a man leaving clutching a bag. He then realized that he had almost forgotten to look for recovery materials for his master. Obviously, he couldn't go any further than a random walk. Better check out this shop first. So he pushed the door open decisively, and the bell above him actually clattered. The pretty girl at the front desk looked happily at the guest. Welcome to Riddler's Mercantile. I don't know if the gentleman wants to buy armor with high durability or magic stones with magic bonuses, but Yao has nothing else to ask for but some oriental herbs. But he warned the clerk that this one might be a little hard to find. Apparently the receptionist doesn't need to worry about him. They have the best selection of goods at Riddler's. You happily covered his mouth. After buying them all at once, he could save time to look at more young ladies. So he handed the receptionist a note. Here's the list of materials he wanted to buy. The receptionist looked at the list, and her expression actually became more and more helpless. Thousands of years of ginseng, ambergris, tianshan snow lotus and other medicinal herbs made her break out into countless cold sweats. Even in the East, these materials are hard to find. These materials are so rare, we don't even have them in our shop. You didn't realize that the weeds outside the Apostles' Temple, which were a big catch, were a scarce commodity in the human world. As he kept thinking about it, the ring on his hand was actually spotted by the front desk lady. It's actually a space ring embedded with top-quality magic stones. So the receptionist rushed forward to stop him and told him to wait before leaving. She remembered that there was still the auction, which would presumably buy what Mr. wanted. There's a black market sale once a year. Everything's on offer. I have one last ticket if you're interested. Sir, the Oriental continent is definitely out of reach for a while. Maybe the materials can really be bought there. So he pointed to the ticket and said he was going to buy it. The lady at the front desk couldn't be happier, but the tickets cost 100 golds. But Yao bought it instantly, and the auction will be held in the basement of the pub at 7 o'clock tonight. The receptionist bent over respectfully and waited until the guests had all left. Her face changed instantly, and she actually showed an imperative gaze. She threw away her apron and exhaled a cloudy breath. Take off your hair and relax your body. The man actually looked at her in fear and said that this month's protection fee had already been paid in full. Linda sneered out. What had she come for? To catch a big fish, of course. Around the town at this time, the time is gradually approaching evening. You looked around suspiciously. The Dragon Rider Tavern should be near here. At that moment the man in black was thought to rush forward and slammed hard into him. I didn't expect Yao to apologize first, saying he was very sorry for not paying attention. The man with the big axe shouts out in anger. You ungrateful, lowly pariah. You helplessly draws the corner of his mouth, bumping a little, and then this is not can't play with it. But the black-clad lord raised his hand to stop it. Don't strike at innocent people. The subordinate was so upset. Why couldn't Lord Man beat him up? He said it didn't look like it was intentional, so we'd better get going and not be late. You suddenly became lewd. This voice under the hood is definitely an iceberg beauty, so they explained it was a misunderstanding and told Yao to watch his step next time. You looked ahead strangely. What exactly was that line of people trying to do? Inside the Dragon Rider Tavern in the depths of the town, there was a strange meeting going on inside. Countless people were coming and going, all wanting to enter the basement of the tavern. At this moment, a man took a big gulp and put down his glass with satisfaction. The mixed juices here are too good. I'll have another one before the auction starts. But there were voices from the back of the room. The grand finale of the auction was said to be an artifact. After all, there are a lot of big names gathered here for that treasure. The man in white robes in the front is Wrecking King Hughes, who is half a step away from being an ace mage. But he's not the only one. All the big names from Thunder Snake are here. It seems that the items in this auction will be hotly contested by all parties. Suddenly, a man appeared and coughed to attract his attention. The pretty girl puts her arm around Yao's shoulder, pretending to be coincidental that they've met again. I can't miss the annual auction. She used her proud figure to rub up against Yu's arm, but she thinks it's too awkward to call her miss. Of course she should call herself Linda. He was embarrassed and rubbed his head, saying that his single name is Yao Yao. He was hooked so easily. Let him deliver the ring to his doorstep when the auction starts. So the pretty girl pretended to be enthusiastic. "Why don't you let her be a temporary guide and take him into the auction? Isn't that Snake's precious daughter Linda? That man is probably another one of her girls." Apparently Yao doesn't care at all. He does love pretty ladies, but there are so many people at this auction. "Aren't you afraid of being reported and investigated?" The organizer of the auction is the head of the triads. "Snake, not only robbers and hoodlums buy from the black market." Before she could finish her introduction, a voice rang out from the auction stage. A man stood calmly on the stage, welcoming the guests. The people below cheered and asked the host to start the auction. "Tonight will be the last night of the auction. I'm sure you've all been waiting for it for a long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started right away." The first item, the Devil's Hand, is still twisting and the reserve price is 50,000 gold. The Devil's Hand can summon demons or curse others. It's rare to see it here, so the crowd scrambled for it, and the price began to soar. There's a lot of good stuff in this auction. You can't miss it. You leaned back freely, saying that he's here anyway. That hairpin was dug up in a 1,000-year-old cave, but the man said it was bad luck. This ring is said to be a relic of the Hanging City, but the man said he was tired. Linda was a bit upset. This guy didn't buy anything, so he had to rob the ring. But there was one more item on display, and although it was ridiculously expensive, it might be a good idea. So it's finally time for the final part of the auction. Let us have the honor to introduce the last item to you. It's also the jewel of the auction. Everyone's eyes are wide open for fear of disturbing the treasure inside the box. It's actually the cold ice jade bracelet and its accompanying lotus. But the starting price is actually 2 million gold. The white-robed man instantly stood up and decisively raised the price by 1 million gold. So the people also bid. After all, that thing is very rare. But Yao didn't make any move, and was actually guessed by the beautiful woman to be a poor man, only to see the man slowly stood up. The corner of his mouth actually hooked up a smile that was bound to get it. Linda was sitting beside him, waiting for the man to bid. As expected, the man lived up to his name. He looked deep into Linda's eyes, and surprisingly raised the price to 10 million gold. At this moment, the auction room suddenly became silent. Linda has long been shocked. The man in front of her eyes even bid such a shocking figure. The host was also stunned, and a cold sweat broke out all over his body. The man stood in his place, not expecting to pay 10 million gold in a single shot. The crowd stood up and wanted to see who was so generous. The host was still in a daze. He had never seen a man who threw away thousands of dollars before. You can only repeat to him. You heard it right. It's 10 million gold. This kid doesn't look like a nobleman. If he can't get the money, he'll be killed. The host is scared and picks up the hammer, and quickly strikes it. But at the last time, someone raised the price to 13 million gold. At this moment, the crowd only felt stunned. Their worldview collapsed. There is still a bidder. Linda was secretly pleased. Even if she couldn't get the space ring, these deals were enough to make a big profit. Yao clasped his hands on his chest and was a bit surprised. This is the guard from before. It seems that they came to the auction for the jade bracelet and the ice lotus. But it's a pity that I'm in a hurry. I can't take my time to bid. You raised the space ring in his hand. With 30 million gold, can we have a deal? The man looked at him with shock, and the voice of the bidder could no longer be heard. The crowd felt that he must be crazy. That is the top magic stone inlaid space ring. The moderator instantly gained strength, and hastily raised his hand to indicate 30 million once. At this time, my subordinate asked the back, "Lord man, do we still have to continue bidding? The other party is different from the others here. He must know the value of the jade bracelet and the ice lotus. He must know the value of the jade bracelet and the ice lotus. And he's able to offer this price in one go. So he must have some leeway." So Yao succeeded in getting the jade bracelet and the ice lotus, and will be able to go to the backstage for the formalities later on. Linda said the money came so fast. It's like riding on a tornado. But you directly flew forward, intending to go straight up to make the deal. Linda was shocked and stood up in a panic, reaching out her hand to stop the man in front of her, but he had already taken the money and ring to the top, and directly traded with the hosts. The man looked at Linda in confusion. "What did you just say that I didn't hear?" The most important rule of the auction is that any buyer who steps onto the stage without permission is in breach of the rules. The offending buyer will not only have to pay the full amount of the auction, and anyone in the auction can snatch the exhibits they bought. At this moment, the white-robed man got excited and rushed straight forward. Countless silhouettes responded, all intent on snatching the treasures that the man had just purchased. All of a sudden, the stage was ablaze with flames, and the floor exploded into the air. The white-robed man had already rushed forward. His eyes had already noticed the treasures inside the treasure box. Sure enough, it was Ralph Hughes. The damn guy was even one step ahead of them. The white-robed man stood still, proudly, and quickly stretched out his hand towards the front. Suddenly, his face was shocked, as if he had seen something horrible. I did not expect to be the chariot Lund. The army people also came to the scene, but did not wait for him to react to the ground gradually spread frost. White-robed man stood in place, legs, actually by the frost, quickly frozen. He looked at the frost on the ground and said, "No good." Could it be the powerful Ice Duchess? Only to see the man in black slowly take off his hat, intending to greet them one by one. As you guessed, it was really an unrivaled icy beauty. As one of the Empire's ace mages, the beauty was known as the Ice Duchess, the daughter of the general. The beauty had slowly walked to the treasure chest, reaching out to pick it up with her hand, intending to take it out and hide it away. At that moment her wrist was grabbed. "Although miss, you are very pretty, but it's not right to take other people's things. It's better to hurry up and hand it over to my hand," only to see the ground on the stage breaking up. "If not careful, it will fall down." Manlina's eyes were stunned. She didn't think she could break free at all. Yu was very upset. "Miss, take away other people's things without saying hello. It's not right-o." But the beautiful lady just coldly drew back her hand without any words. He looked to the host and said he was in a hurry, so he took the things straight away. Manlina looked down at the treasure chest. The contents were suddenly empty, but that was the cold ice jade bracelet that she had waited so hard for to bring her magic to the next level. She used her magic with displeasure. After all, she wasn't going to let him go so easily, so she attacked directly, and a huge cloud of dust and smoke rose from the ground. As the ice gradually spread, her expression became more and more gloomy. The crowd watching from below was shocked. It was actually the eternal frozen prison. Linda gritted her teeth in anger. This is a big problem. But when the people ran to the door, they found that the exit had been blocked by Manlina. At this time, the ground was full of cold ice, and everyone was frozen in place by this fierce cold ice. For a while, the scene became silent, leaving behind only the gorgeous cold ice. Manlina looked at the man in triumph. "It seems that you won't be able to leave in a while." You didn't care at all. He just asked lightly, "Is it really like that?" So he went forward to borrow the sword. The man was shocked by a jolt. His sword how in his hand. Diamondstein snorted in disdain. "With this broken sword can resist any magic skill." So he quickly struck. His veins rippled. Actually wanted to break the man in front of him into pieces. His magic skill quickly came in front of the man, but the man stood still and didn't move at all, only to see you evil smile and swing up both arms. His body actually burst out unprecedentedly powerful energy after decisively swung a sword forward. If he withstood it, not dead or disabled. Obviously, he didn't want to avoid it. He had to face it directly, so the ice shattered, and with a violent impact, Diamondstein was already too weak and crashed into the wall, which resulted in a huge crater. Then he fell unconscious. A mixture of ice and debris scattered on the ground. Linda looked at him in shock. What the hell was this guy's origin? Obviously, Yao could not take care of her. He said he was in a hurry. "Don't send them one by one. Let's all go together." The white-robed man and the crowd froze in place, looking incredibly shocked and horrified. However, Manlina launched her skills and reached out to gather the power of her whole body, only to see the air slowly gathered huge ice, and even countless ice cones emerged from it. With a wave of her hand, countless ice cones attacked the unrivaled man in front of her. Unexpectedly, Yao did not intend to dodge at all, and waited for the ice picks to come. Sure enough, at the top of his head, the ice pick stopped instantly. What happened? Manlina was going to give him another chance. She only wanted the jade bracelet, but the man did not care about this threat. After all, the bracelet and the ice lotus, he wanted both. A beautiful woman creates a room full of frost, but a man destroys it with ease. Manlina gave him one last chance. If he didn't hand over the ice bracelet, it would be no wonder that she would use the full strike. You calmly stood still. As long as he answered unsatisfactorily, countless ice picks would pierce him. Obviously, he still refused to say hurry up and finish it. There are still people waiting for him at home. Her face instantly gloomy tone is even more dissatisfied. "Then don't blame me for the hard robbing." So countless ice picks attacked him. I didn't expect that the ice picks had a strange power on them, only to see Yu Yao slightly hooked up a touch of evil smile. He instantly pressed his sword against the ground, and suddenly a fierce energy rose up. He easily broke the ice cone attack, and even had a tendency to gradually explode towards his opponent. It seems that this move really doesn't have much effect on him, but her purpose has been achieved. Linda looked ahead in fear. Those people were trying to sneak up on her. Apparently the men had already realized this, and were patiently waiting for them to attack. The ice above them began to break up, as if to smash the men below them into pancakes. As expected, Manlina used the ice burial technique, and as the name suggests, the man was about to be turned into an ice corpse. The huge ice was coming from above, but you didn't even bother to dodge it and wait for it to land. At this moment, the place where he was actually smashed into the ground by the huge ice. After the dust cleared, the ice was still there, but the ground had already been smashed to pieces. Manlina hurriedly ordered to look for the ice bracelet. Presumably he had already put it in another space ring. I didn't realize that Yao had suddenly appeared, and the ice bracelet was indeed in his space ring, but I'm not underneath the ice. I'm behind you, miss. Manlina showed an incredibly shocked expression. Her body slowly turned to the side in a stiff manner. The ice that blocked her vision slowly broke up, and Yu, who was pressed down to the ground, was actually standing in the same place unharmed. At this moment, she couldn't calm down anymore. She didn't expect that he could actually escape under her own desperate move. Yao told her to wake up. That spell was so loud that even a pig could hear it, not to mention the cold air emanating from such a large block of ice. It's impossible not to let people notice it. Manlina sensed her opponent's provocation, but she didn't dare to make any further move against him. Yu was obviously running out of patience. Are you sure you want to continue? Before she could react, her dress was unexpectedly torn apart by someone. She was shocked and ashamed. She hurried to stop it. After all, as a duke's clothes, how could it be torn? But Yu directly swung his long sword. Strange and huge energy attacked her. In a flash, her clothes directly turned into countless pieces. She screamed and subconsciously covered herself. The men in the auction room were stunned by the scene. Manlina was so humiliated that she sat down on her knees. How could things turn out like this? Fortunately, her subordinates came in time, took the robe and quickly put it on the honorable lord, but she suddenly thought of the time when she was about to attack and was hit by a man. I'm afraid this man could challenge an entire army with a single strike. Yu raised his sword impatiently. Does anyone else want the jade bracelet and the ice lotus? If not, then you can leave first. Unexpectedly, the crowd instantly shook their heads frantically, and their bodies couldn't stop trembling. My subordinate hurriedly walked forward. Lord Man, do you need me to mobilize the army to hunt down this person? She looked lost and lowered her eyes, saying she didn't want to listen to her subordinate's advice. Just now she realized that it was only a matter of his whim to destroy everyone. Yu looked at the cowering crowd and had no choice but to walk to the door alone and wield his long sword. After he slowly landed with a handsome flying body, the ice beside the door gradually began to break apart. A loud noise accompanied by the falling of the ice. The door to the auction house was opened. Yu waved his hand and said he could go out now. But Yu held the long sword in his hand and found Linda. Can you please return this sword to that person for me? Linda quickly took the sword and said, I'll take care of it. At that moment, Yu suddenly began to look her up and down, his hand resting on his chin as he pondered. Linda, you really do look much cuter with your hair tied up than with your current shoulder-length hair. The woman's small face instantly turns red. Is this what it feels like to be teased by a powerful man? She reminded the man to save any ingredients that were on the list for him the next time he came back. The crowd had their mouths open in dismay. Was this still the snake beauty Linda they knew? So he went up and quietly asked, wondering who that your excellency was just now. Miss Linda smiled confidently. So powerful man, who else could it be? After all, he's so handsome, golden and powerful. Of course he's my future husband. I didn't expect Linda to swear to the crowd that I'll never marry him in this life or the next. Yao may not know that after tonight, he will be the black-clad sword saint controlling people's life and death. He helplessly rubbed his nose. It can't be Master Kur scolding himself. It seems that he has to hurry to go back. Suddenly a sound came from inside the alley. He didn't expect this woman to be quite tough. He had to be beaten before he was honest. Kuyu is indeed a nosy man. Quickly rushed to the hutong where the sound came from. The man with the whip threw it down with all his might, cursing the woman's shamelessness. But the whip was being pulled by someone, so the man couldn't get it off. Yu was very upset with these people. If you are so violent to a girl, you will be punished by God. I didn't realize that the man with the whip had a group of accomplices, with sticks in their hands, threatening to mind their own business. Apparently, you can't stand threats, so he reached out his hand and pulled hard. The man with the whip became terrified and flew to the side. With one easy blow, you shattered the man's body into pieces. Who among the punks present was not convinced? The man with the whip opened his mouth wide and foamed at the mouth, losing consciousness in an instant. The punks were shocked. Their jaws almost fell to the ground. Silence is the best sound. Yao handsomely inserted his hands into his pockets. What did you say just now? The wind is too strong. I didn't hear it clearly. The punks laughed out of embarrassment and said it was time to go back. It would be bad if they met criminals. So a large group of people scrambled to escape, fearing that the man would strike again. After you finished dealing with these scumbags, he softly told the other side that they were all gone and it was fine. Before he could finish, his eyes widened in disbelief. Why are you here? At this time the moonlight has covered the whole room, but the room is incredibly bright. Core was a bit panicked. Why hasn't this guy you come back yet? It can't be that he's in some kind of trouble, right? So she led Sylph to the door, saying that she should go and look for him herself. But just as she reached out her hand to open the door, someone else opened it beforehand. Kagome suddenly froze in place, but she couldn't take her eyes off the two people outside. I didn't expect that Yui would bring Egil here, but why is she so desolate? After filling her stomach, Agur explained to them that Elsa had disappeared. To be precise, Aisha had suddenly told her she wanted to take a break from school, but she hadn't been able to contact her since she left. She must be in some kind of trouble. That's why she came to them to check on Aisha's condition. You suddenly sank into deep thought on the sidelines. But wasn't there anything out of the ordinary before she left school? Egil suddenly recalled the sad expression on Aisha's face when she said goodbye. So at dawn, they got a carriage and waited at the door. You took out the bottle filled with potion and handed it to Kagome, saying that it was a potion he made himself and that it was safe to drink. Although it can't restore all the magic power immediately, it can still effectively increase the speed of recovery. It's a shame she had to go back to deal with the death of Acemans. Otherwise we could have checked out Elsa's house together. But the way things are going, we need to stay as far away from the three families as possible. And Egil is likely to just have the same family name. Her full name is Gillisis, the same surname as one of the three families, the generals. But even if Egil is a shogun, it doesn't change the fact that she's our friend. Kagome had expected him to say that, so she planned to go back to school first. In fact, she was very relieved to leave Egil in Yao's hands, but she felt a little uneasy in her heart. There was nothing wrong with Agur. She was sleeping soundly in the carriage. Yu was cowering in the corner alone, regretting that she really wanted to take back what she had said before, but it's hard for her to come all the way from the school. Otherwise she wouldn't be sleeping soundly. In fact, that night in the alley, the walls had been smashed to pieces by the punks. Yu was also shocked to see a friend from school in a place like this. Egil raised her head in surprise at the sound and looked at the man who saved her with a stunned expression. When she saw him, she burst into tears. As expected, she violently jumped into Yu's embrace and said with an overwhelming devastation that she had finally found them. But why are you the only one looking for us? Are you all right? Are you hurt? Egil suddenly opened her eyes wide. Her face turned red. After that, she pushed Yu's hands away, and shyly ran 2 steps forward and turned around without looking at him. She hugged herself tightly and said that she was fine, but she had something very important to tell Kagome-sensei. Egil shyly turned her head sideways and reminded the man to hurry up and take me to see Kagome-sensei. But Kanyu notices the wound on her shoulder. The blood is still bubbling from the torn wound of her clothes. He had a moment of anger to kill all those punks, but he held himself back. At that time, the incident was like this. Also really hard for her to run to such a faraway place to come. So sleep well tonight. With him there will be no one to come and disturb. After 2 days of traveling, the carriage arrived at the gates of the Lawrence Manor in Jursta City. The early morning breeze was blowing, rustling the weeds in front of the entrance, but the interior of the luxurious manor before them was empty and the walls were badly damaged. Is this really the Lawrence Manor? But we must not be going in the wrong direction. It seems that the Lawrence family, who used to live here, disappeared more than 10 years ago. Over time, the Lawrence house has fallen into disuse. When they walked inside and looked around, it looked like it hadn't been lived in for a long time. At that moment, something suddenly fell from the wall and caught their eyes. Egil tried to move forward to see what looked like a piece of paper covering a picture frame inside. Despite the danger, she pulls the paper away from the wall in front of her. They were all shocked and kept thinking about who the 2 people in the portrait were. Is this Elsa's mother and father? But the man's appearance has been shattered to pieces. They weren't sure, but the only thing they knew for sure was that the woman in the portrait was definitely not Elsa. We'll stay here for a few days and see if we can find out what happened at Lawrence Hall. At that moment, Egil suddenly remembered that Elsa had given her something. She quickly searched her body for something Elsa had asked her to do before she said goodbye. She held the small wooden box with both hands, indicating that this is the thing to be handed over to Yao. The man took his friend to the tavern, and there was a delicate wooden box on the table. Is this the strange ring that Elsa asked you to entrust to me? But the design on the ring isn't Lawrence's. Whose could it be? We've asked around the city's unions, but they've never seen a ring with this design on it. But then the waiter realized it was the Earl's family ring. The owner of this ring was a nobleman of great elegance, and she remembered how charming he was. Although I was comforting my friend at the time, it didn't stop me from seeing this ring at all. You couldn't help but look at Eggle. They exchanged glances and agreed on the same meaning, but the waiter was a bit angry. That nobleman seemed to be more interested in Lilith. If they remember correctly, Elsa's mother's name was Lilith. The Lilith you mentioned, is she the one who disappeared from Lawrence Hall? But the waiter thinks that Lilith fell in love at first sight with the Earl and ran away with the child. You hurriedly pulled back the woman who let her thoughts fly. Then I wonder where this Earl is now. She remembered that the Count's territory was in the southeastern part of the empire. In any case, it was a long way away from here. Before she could finish her thought, she was interrupted by a customer who wanted a dozen beers. She hurriedly reminded him that the whole empire has been rumored to be haunted by demons in the southeast. You looked ahead and thought, was Aisha really taken to that kind of place? Agir looked at him with a serious face, his tone desperate for his help. Can you teach me how to fight? If we really meet the demons, my magic power won't be of much help. I'll probably slow you down, but I still want to find Elsa with you. Obviously, Yao is full of questions about this. What is fighting spirit? It's different from the elemental magic that relies on talent. It's a kind of magic that can be learned through training and cultivation. But how come you don't know what fighting spirit is? Didn't you use fighting spirit to defeat Kyle before? You suddenly realized that he was revealing something, so he hastened to say that he was testing her. Agir had already believed in him, so if I can answer it, can you teach me? Yu awkwardly stretched out his finger. Since the power released is very similar, then we can try it out. At this moment, the holy floating building was illuminated by the sunlight, as if it was coated with a layer of light. I didn't expect the room to be in a mess. Countless books and documents were thrown around randomly. In addition to the hellfire, Acemans had also collected apostle-related items and put them here. Kegon looked at the drawer in front of her, but who could have taken it away by breaking the restraints? If someone stole it, it's even more important that the public doesn't know about his death. Otherwise, the Empire would be in even more danger. So she could only look down and sigh helplessly. So she took out the magic potion that Yao had given her. After all, the 5 schools competition was coming up soon. She didn't know if the two of them would be able to make it back after finding Elsa. At this moment, the two of them, who were worried by Kegom, were traveling on the road in the carriage. Eggle shyly covered her mouth, her body kneeling on the seat, and shouted in a delicate voice, "No! Yu is not threatened at all. If he is not allowed to touch there, he is more likely to try it." He quickly reached out his hand and touched it upwards. The temperature inside the carriage gradually increased. Eggle suddenly looked at him with sideways eyes, trying to open her mouth to stop his touching. Suddenly a foot flew out and kicked the man directly to the other side of the carriage. Yu angrily swung his fist. "I helped you to use external force to guide your fighting chi. How dare you kick me?" Eggle kept rolling happily and apologized to him. He was too ticklish and couldn't hold it back. Yu did not accept this apology, and angrily wanted to let Sylph judge him. Unexpectedly, Sylph directly ignored him, indicating that she was in a situation of do not look, do not listen, and so another round of fighting began in the carriage, with the coachman lamenting the stamina of the young men. 2 weeks later, time flew by, and they arrived in the city the tavern clerk had told them about, Nornia. Eggle looked around with suspicion. Is this the center of Nornia? The streets of the town were silent and all the shops were closed. Pedestrians in black robes walked along the streets, but no one spoke. The black-robed man looked at the carriage in front of him, and looked thoughtful for a moment. Eggle poked the man. "We may have come to the wrong place. How could Elsa live in such a place? But the coachman can't be wrong. But it's strange that the grocery shops are not open here. The front is quite busy. Let's get off there and take a look. The red house in front of us has an Adventurers Association on the door plate. People are sitting in front of the door, chatting and drinking. I didn't realize that there were so many people waiting to enter the Adventurers Guild here." So she went up to the front desk and asked if there was an earl named Telder here. The lady at the front desk was indeed very enthusiastic. "Yes, but what do you want with the Count?" Agir unguardedly said out loud and was suddenly quickly interrupted by Yu. If Aisha's mother really remarried to the Count and the people of another city thought that they had disappeared, that means Aisha's mother is trying to hide it. So we can't ask directly. So he quickly moved forward to explain. "In fact, we found the Earl's ring and wanted to give it back to His Excellency. What we don't know is where the Count lives now. The Count's castle is in the far suburbs. To get there you have to go through the Nanya forest. Just something happened over there. They listened in silence as the beautiful woman explained, and the result was surprising. Egil cried out in disbelief. Are there really demons here? In fact, since half a year ago, the beasts in this area have become more and more numerous, and then there were rumors that there were demons in the area. It wasn't until recently that they were finally identified, so adventurers came here to hunt them. Although this is the Count's territory, the Count has not reacted to this matter. The bounty is issued by the association, and killing a demon is worth 5 million gold coins. If I help the Earl solve these problems, will he marry Elsa to me? But Agir doesn't believe in it. The demons have long been extinct. How can they appear again? But Beauty doesn't know the situation either. The 100-member hunting group sent out by the association today hasn't returned yet. You suddenly remembered that before this generation of human civilization, the demons and humans coexisted harmoniously, but then war broke out. In the end, there was a war between Orma, who helped the humans, and Capaxis, who supported the demons. After the war, they disappeared, and the demons never appeared in the human world again. If it wasn't for these two guys fighting fiercely, human beings wouldn't be afraid of the apostles like this. At this time in the forest of Nonia, what is the situation now? I saw countless human corpses in the forest, and almost all of the blood on the ground came from them. I didn't think there were any survivors here. He went crazy and quickly fled forward, but a few black shadows appeared behind him. He was so scared that he didn't even care to look at his surroundings. It's true that in the moment of panic, people often trip over something. The man fell forward uncontrollably and lost his desire to escape. After he fell, several fierce beasts appeared behind him. He sat down on his arse and shivered, pleading with them not to kill him. But the beasts were not merciful, let alone the man they hated the most. So it claws down, and the trees around the man are instantly splattered with drops of blood. The beast's long claws were still dripping blood, seemingly displeased with the smell of the human. But far away from the town center the sun shone brightly, a peaceful and beautiful time of the year. The 100-member group sent out to hunt is actually only hunting a demon werewolf. Yule waved his hand dismissively. Just one werewolf can be solved with 1 or 2 swords. The beauty at the front desk was surprised. How could it be solved in a couple of swords? She looked up and down at the man in front of her. Could it be that you are a gold-level adventurer or above? But you innocently held up the iron plate and said he was just a black iron. When the crowd heard this, they laughed and taunted him not to just drink but also to eat some food. This werewolf is cunning and fast, and is said to be able to manipulate shadow magic. Aren't werewolves a bunch of simple-minded demons? How come they learned magic after they disappeared and came back? The black-robed man told Yao to take his girlfriend home. After all, if you don't know anything, you'll get yourself killed. But listening to them, that one seems to be very strong. Should we find another route? But you told her to be completely at ease. Even if she can use magic, it's only a matter of a few more swords. Now that we know where the Count's castle is, we should hurry and find it. The outskirts of the forest of Nonia are incredibly eerie. Egil was carrying a machete. We should not come back tomorrow. The roads are not easy to walk at night. No sooner had her fears subsided than there was a rustling in the bushes, so she looked around furiously to see who was there. She was all ready to go when she realized that a white rabbit had jumped out of the bushes. Egil was relieved. She had been worried for nothing, but it was a rabbit. What she didn't realize was that there was a beast behind her trying to sneak up on her. This kind of retarded little trick, how can it be Yao Yao? Only to see that he has long been aware of the rapid look at the past, and decisively kicked at it, causing its body to fly out quickly. It was actually a black wild leopard. Fortunately, it had been injured and smashed to the side. Unexpectedly, this leopard's body gradually disappeared after it fell down. Yu's face was gloomy as he looked towards the panther. The presence of this kind of thing meant that the werewolves were there as well. After all, this kind of shadow leopard, only the demon race would raise magical beasts. Sure enough, there was another rustling in the bushes. Countless shadow leopards and werewolves had actually come to this place. Egil raised his machete in fear and quickly hid behind you. The werewolf with countless shadow leopards is slowly walking towards them with a sense of oppression. I never thought that a human would recognize our shadow panther. At the same time, the shadow leopards also opened their mouths to howl fiercely in a coordinated manner. The wolves looked the men over before proposing to join them and unite the human continent. Apparently they didn't care about the wolves' threats, which angered the wolves to no end, but they wouldn't join them, and they wouldn't allow them to rule the human race. The werewolves burst out laughing. You think you can stop us? You know the hunting group you sent out before was killed by us without a single one left. You looked at it indifferently. Do you want me to pick you up and lift you high? The werewolf was directly annoyed. How dare he make fun of the powerful and honorable demon race? So he decisively ordered the Shadow Panther to attack. Don't show any mercy to them. You was so confident that he wanted Eggle to take the lead. Unexpectedly, she was very excited. It was finally time for her to take the lead. The werewolf was a bit surprised. Wasn't this woman scared to death just now? Obviously no one would answer his question. Eggle had already picked up her weapon and gathered her magical energy. Suddenly she looked at the beast with a sharp look in her eyes. As expected, she learnt the fighting chi that Yao had taught her, and directly unleashed powerful energy towards the shadow leopard. In an instant, they were cut in half without any resistance. After they fell down helplessly, their bodies began to split again and again. The werewolf's shocked look was really stupid. At this point it didn't know what to do. Eggle let out a breath of air. Not in vain to pretend to be scared for so long. The werewolf instantly understood. You guys are trying to trick me to come up before acting, right? You pretended to be surprised. It seems that you still have some brains in your body. The Wolf King's doubtful voice rang out. Truly a bold human. So you've been acting from the beginning to the end, just to trick me out. You waved his hand to show that it's no big deal. We are just acting on our way. If I finish you off, not only can I get the reward money, maybe Elsa will even marry me. The demon werewolf was completely ignored and kept shouting, damn it, if you want to kill it, why do you have to do it as an act? If you had joined the Demon King's army, you might have been spared, but now you don't have that chance. So he quickly attacked the human, but the man stood still and didn't move. Then he suddenly raised his foot and moved it up and down, stretching his calf. Then he kicked the werewolf in the stomach, sending it flying with no resistance at all. The werewolf's eyes widened and he spat out blood. How could he be hurt by a small human? But its body had already fallen backward. It was only because of its own hard grip on the ground that it didn't fall down. You said that he had something to ask the werewolf, or leave it to him to solve the problem. The werewolf's eyes looked at them with a blank stare. Obviously it knew the human's plan well. They had deliberately provoked it, in order to make it reveal its physical flaws. I didn't realize that you guys were really good at it, so I won't show any mercy next time. So it frantically threw up its head and roared, and a pile of black magic gathered inside its raised paw. With a strange sound, the werewolf's body gradually began to change. Agir said, "Oh no! What the hell is that smoke?" You had already recognized this thing. Who had given it the shadow magic of the underworld? Apparently the werewolf rushed over in a complete frenzy. If you want to know, go to the underworld and ask it. You easily dodged its attack and said that going to the underworld wasn't impossible either. Before he could finish his sentence, the werewolf attacked again with its long claws and terrorized him. He easily dodged it again and said that there is a very annoying guy there. The werewolf charged at him again, and opened its bloody mouth and extended its claws to crush him. He dodged it again with ease, but its magic had already smashed the ground to pieces. The werewolf was puzzled and shocked. He couldn't even touch his sleeve. At this moment, Yu's voice rang out, indicating that after half a day's thought it would be more convenient to ask it. But the werewolf was very disdainful. You asked me to answer the question and I answered it. Isn't it very disgraceful? Yu was suddenly a bit annoyed that this werewolf didn't understand human language, so he decided not to focus on dodging, and instantly transformed his long sword. At the same time, he attacked the werewolf with a ferocious face, the corner of his mouth hooked up with a bad smile. The werewolf was already a bit tired. His furry body was actually sweating coldly. As expected, it was too late to dodge, and a huge energy slashed at its center. The werewolf gritted its teeth and tried to resist, but the impact of the energy left it at a loss. The huge energy had already reached Agir's side, and she had to rush to block it. The forest suddenly lit up like day, followed by a huge explosion of energy. The werewolf stood frozen in place, awaiting the judgment of the man across from him. Unexpectedly, after this huge energy, it made it sit down on its knees on the ground. It looked blankly at the tip of the sword in front of it, welcoming its own death. Yao was standing in front of it handsomely. So do you want face or life? I spared your life and you obeyed me. Then tell me, what is the situation of the demon race next? The werewolf said that their demon tribe under the leadership of the emperor sent me to spy on the human situation. Originally, they thought the humans were not as strong as the demons, so they were going to take this place first. Afterwards, he was going back to inform the army, who knew that he would meet the two of them. But you want to return to the human continent. Where is the current habitat? Obviously this cannot not be exposed casually, but its life and death is in front of the man's thoughts. In fact, it's an adult who opened up a small world for us to recuperate in. Egil was curious to know who was so powerful as to open a world, but the Lord has always said not to reveal his identity. He is the savior of the demon race, but this seems like the kind of thing Omar would do. After all, he's got a million different skills, so why did he change now and let the demons come back to invade the humans? Before the werewolf's reply, Yu's expression became incredibly tense. Aegir also sensed his change, and asked with concern about what had happened. Someone actually opened the gate of the realm, which is the gateway to every world. At this moment, the screen came to a room, and the light inside was brightly lit. A woman walked up to the door and knocked gently, waiting for a response, so she slowly opens the door and looks at her baby girl inside. It was Elsa's mother, staring at her with her arms folded across her chest. She had been given a gift by a lord, who was waiting for her in the hall. Elsa had to get up and put down the red roses, saying that she would go down as soon as she was cleaned up. She looked at the roses for a long time, and then she went to the strange lord without looking back, but she put the flowers in a box, as if she was thinking of someone. Meanwhile, in the forest, the moon was already high in the sky. The world he had just sensed through the gate of the realm revealed a strange aura. At that moment, Aegir walked up to him and gently woke up someone who was still in deep thought. If you want to report to that lord, you have to open the realm gate or someone to pass it on. Right. The werewolf nodded heavily. We can't go straight back to the magic realm, so there is a transmitter here. So you needed it to take himself to the messenger so he could pass a message to the ruler. But there's a place to go first. I didn't expect the werewolf to follow obediently behind me. She said that if you go in this direction, you'll reach the castle. The werewolf asked if the castle was the one by the sea. I didn't realize that place was actually occupied by their messenger. If Elsa lives in that castle, is that ring her distress signal? Yu's face instantly sank, thinking that what she said made sense. In that case, he quickly came behind Aegir. He directly picked her up by the waist with ease, stating that he would now hurry a little to set off. As he carried the woman forward, he also did not forget to remind the werewolves behind him to follow him, so they soon arrived at the castle by the sea, with huge waves lapping at the rocks. But when they arrived at their destination, Yao was a gentleman and kneeled down. He gently lowered Egil to show that they had arrived here, but the castle in front of them looks very gloomy. At this moment, someone is walking slowly. They looked up instantly to see who had seen them so quickly. They didn't realize it was a human, greeting them both and knowing they were coming. He took a respectful stance and invited them to join him in the castle, but the waves below are stronger, and the castle is full of eerie signs. The man is still inviting them in. After all, it's their lord who gave the order. Egil clearly had his wits about him. This couldn't be a trap set by the summoner, could it? But they weren't sure. But they were going to go in and find out what they wanted. So they walked slowly forward and entered the darkened castle. I didn't realize that His Excellency had been waiting for a long time and wanted them to go to the parlor as soon as possible. Suddenly he looked at something strange with a cold, sharp look on his face. Egil hid behind him in fear, asking in a soft voice what happened. Yu helplessly waved his hand, saying that he was just dazed for a while. She thought there was something important, but she seemed to smell a strange fragrance. But this kind of scent is as good as nothing. It's better to go up the stairs first. The castle was brightly lit, with portraits of men on the walls. The subordinate led them to the parlor, and their mission was complete. As expected, the lord put down his cup of tea and told his subordinates to leave if they had completed their tasks. She smiled as she rose to greet the two guests who had traveled from afar. She slowly walked towards them, welcoming them with a calm and collected manner. Even the knowledgeable Yu was stunned for a moment at this moment. Apparently Egil wasn't so calm, and shouted out to Elsa in shock. But she explained to the crowd that no, she was Elsa's mother, Lilith. So Aegir breathed a sigh of relief. So it was really remarriage and not disappearance. But Lilith walks up to him. I guess you're the boy who stole my daughter's heart. You didn't care about anything else. He just wanted to ask where Aisha was now. Lilith smiled coldly and reached out to him. If you want to take my daughter, I'm afraid you can't. But if you want to have a night of fun, I can accompany you. Yu suddenly became unhappy. His expression became more and more serious. He suddenly grabbed Lilith's wrist, stopping the woman's energy that wanted to move towards him. I didn't realize that she was a chimera. Their hunting range is really extensive. Egil was incredibly surprised. Wasn't she Elsa's mother? Was she a summoner? However, She said she was not, but she was curious how you found out her identity. In fact, inviting us in right after arriving at the castle. Only magic perception can do that. How can you explain that after more than 10 years? You look the same as before, and the charm magic you unleashed just now confirms my suspicion. It's true that she's a chimera, but Elsa is also her daughter, only she's a half-blood. As a reward for blocking her attack, Elsa was actually in the room at the end of the first floor, so he calmly turned around to leave, not forgetting to pull Eggle up beside him. But she didn't intend to go with him. After all, she didn't want to be a light bulb. You looked around incredulously. Are you sure you want to stay here and wait for us? Lilith suddenly reassured him, saying that she would definitely not hurt her. After all, it's late at night. I advise you to go and see Aisha as soon as possible, otherwise she'll be asleep. You told Agir to be careful, and to call out to him immediately if anything happens. I didn't expect Lilith to be disappointed. What would happen later on? You acted quickly and went to the first floor to check if Elsa was sleeping, but he found that the door was not closed, so he had to go in and observe. So he walked into the room with light steps, but he found that there was no one in the big room. Obviously, Yao is very excited. Is this the room of a beautiful girl? But before he could be happy, he found a red rose beside the table. This is the rose he gave to Elsa before he left for the Magic Exchange Conference. Before he finished thinking, the door behind him suddenly opened. You look back with some surprise. He didn't expect to see such an erotic scene. His beloved Elsa opened the door. Water droplets were still sliding down on her white body. The woman was so viciously entangled in the tentacles that the ice sword in her hand had long since fallen down, but the tentacles became more and more excessive, and even gradually wrapped around her whole body. Pars looked evilly at the woman. You say you'll let go and you'll let go. You think too highly of yourself. Could you have run away from me after I put you down? Not wanting to give up, Elsa reached out her hand and waved it randomly to conjure up ice magic. Apparently her actions had angered the man, and within the labyrinth of his dominant heart, there was still resistance to escape, so more tentacles reached out to her, directly interrupting the energy she was struggling to gather. As they continued to tense, it left Elsa somewhat mildly unable to catch her breath. Sure enough, the tentacles instantly wrapped around her entire body and continued to tighten around her. The Count was going to leave it at that. After all, she was about to become his lordship's future wife. But even if she becomes his excellency's favorite, she'll never let him go. The Earl snorted coldly at once. Then let me see how you will not let me go. Now that you mention it, I remember there's something I've been forgetting to tell you. He bared his fangs in a sinister manner. The Lord is only interested in your flesh. After you become a dependent, your current soul and personality, all of it will be replaced. So let the tentacles wrap all over her, and you can sleep in the darkness of your cage. At that moment, at his back, a huge ice rock appeared and was coming towards him. The Count suddenly felt that something was wrong and looked viciously behind him. At the same time, he quickly turned around and summoned his tentacles to come and answer the battle, not expecting them to instantly splatter countless blood. The moment the tentacles were summoned back to him, Elsa fell to the ground with a vacant look in her eyes. The Count looked across the room in displeasure. What are you doing launching an attack on me again? It's her mother, Lilith. Don't you know what I'm doing? You never told me that Elsa's soul and personality would be replaced. With that, she quickly rushed forward, raising the weapon in her hand to strike at him in anger. But her hands, which had raised her weapon, were quickly entangled by the man's use of his skill. Her angry countenance gave a start, and it was evident that she had forgotten the man's native. Sure enough, her body fell backwards uncontrollably after the man's easy strike. She slumped to the ground in agony, the excruciating pain preventing her from standing at all. What's the point of you doing this? Creatures other than me are restricted. Then, in other words, no one can beat me in my world. Besides, what's the point of sacrificing a daughter if you're going to be appreciated by that lord? But if Elsa's soul is erased, what's the difference between that and being dead? I didn't expect the Count to just yank her hair up and slam it hard into the ground, if it weren't for the fact that His Excellency only wants a virgin. I'm afraid you'd have to be sacrificed too. It's hard for me to put up with you for so many years without touching you. It's just as well. Let's enjoy this attractive body tonight. Lilith suddenly realized that it wasn't right to make her daughter do things she didn't like. If there is a God, please save us from this darkness. At that moment there was a sudden appearance above him, and the Count stopped his movements to look upwards. Unexpectedly, the man didn't even wait for his thoughts and quickly used his skills to charge towards him. At the same time, a huge explosion rang out, instantly stirring up countless thick smoke on the ground. Lilith looked ahead in surprise. Was it her daughter's beloved who had come to her rescue? Sure enough, he rubbed his head in embarrassment. He had managed to land on his feet. The Count stood behind him in dark thought, and for a moment was at a loss for what to say. He skimmed in shock that he had managed to land so safely within the labyrinth of the heart. Is it for that man that Elsa is trying to defy herself to escape the marriage? Then why not kill the man and solve the problem yourself? You stood in place and rubbed his eyes, not realizing that this was actually a labyrinthine garden. Before he could finish admiring it, a violent sound came from behind him. You had to turn to look across the room, and sure enough, the energy came even more quickly. Black shadows instantly swept around him, leaving him no time to fight against them. Suddenly the black shadows split apart violently, forming a huge encirclement towards him. I didn't realize that Yao was standing still, waiting for the danger to come with a handsome movement. At this he glanced lightly at the Count, his eyes revealing disdain, only to see him instantly manifest a longsword, his talent energy violently erupting. You walked forward with one hand in his pocket handsomely. The dark shadows around him had long since been cut off, but Sylph, possessed within the longsword, sounded quietly, so you looked towards it suspiciously and asked softly what had happened. Sylph's face was in excruciating pain. Those shadows were eating away at me. This question was obviously a bit difficult. How could it encroach on the Excalibur sword spirit, the shadowy figure in front of them, however, sneered darkly, as if mocking their incompetence? Shadow magic loves to devour good things, and it seems that this sword spirit must be very tempting. You actually froze when he saw his appearance and actually stared blankly at the Count. You look like the portrait of the Count of Terror on the wall of the castle hall. The Count was instantly annoyed. You've got a lot of guts. Once I've disposed of your little rat, the sword spirit in your hand should be mine as well. And remember, before you die, my name is not Scaredy Cat. Rather, it was the mighty Earl of Palstead, not a figure he could mention at will. But when his skills came to the man was actually planning to respond with a straight face. Sure enough, with the impact of the skill, the ground was actually smashed into pieces. The Count of Fear of Death laughed out loud. So what if a man could find the location? He would still be killed. But he suddenly stopped laughing and looked across the pandemonium in disbelief, only to see a figure revealed in the smoke, slowly walking towards him. As expected, Yao's present was unharmed. He grasped the Earl's sharp weapon with one hand. Whether you call it special fear of death or special fear of death, Yu's fingers exerted a little pressure, and that one sharp weapon began to shatter. As his energy erupted, the ground and even the entire castle exploded instantly. After all, I'm afraid of the death of the Count in front of other people. Jean gone masturbate other people's sword spirit. The Count raised his head quietly in fear, not realizing that he was even more shocked by what lay before him. He watched as Yu Jing disappeared in front of his eyes, suddenly twisting his head from side to side to observe the. Sure enough, Yao suddenly appeared in front of him, accompanied by an angry scolding that he was simply going too far. The Count muttered in continual astonishment that it was utterly impossible to walk out of within the labyrinth of the heart. The attack power of creatures other than him should be exponentially weaker. But from what happened just now, it seems you're the summoner from the demon world. Right, but where are Elsa and Egil now? The Count, however, was silent, but inwardly he pondered who it was of whom he spoke. Suddenly the corners of his mouth hooked up, so the girl's name was Egil, but the ground is suddenly thick with white smoke. A great battle is about to be triggered. The Count looked at the man grimly. Don't worry, I'll let you see her soon. After he saw the Count's evil smile, he couldn't help but wonder what this guy was up to again. But he suddenly felt a hint of something wrong. There was an armored warrior behind him who wanted to make a sneak attack. When you realized that something was wrong, he jumped up easily to avoid the fatal blow. He looked down with a grave expression, the weapon held in the armored warrior's hand. It's Egil's battle axe. How is this possible? But before he could probe again, the armored warrior actually took dozens of steps backward. The bulky armor did not see the face at all, only what appeared to be shouting from within. You suddenly shouted Egil at it, wanting to see how the other would react. I didn't expect the armored warriors in front of me to be standing still without any movement, but they've quietly raised their weapons and are eagerly planning to attack you. You instantly condensed his gaze. There was an aura of the undead about them. Then a hand suddenly rose upwards, so it was a gesture to start a call to arms, and countless armored warriors rushed forward. But fearing that there was anger within the undead, he just kept dodging. but except for the one with the battle axe, the other undead were destroyed by him, only to see him sliced through with a hand slash. The undead fell to the ground in response. As he became more skilled, the undead were eliminated faster. Suddenly the undead with a battle axe in hand rushed forward, and you just happened to be looking for her. So he suddenly reached out and grabbed the weapon, stopping the tomahawk undead from moving forward. They stood still, but Yao's aura had long since outdone it. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Even Eggle is probably just being manipulated. I didn't expect that after opening it. Yao would be a bit overwhelmed. I saw that Eggle's eyes were empty, frozen as if he had no reaction whatsoever. Yu's body trembled with fear, and his incredibly soft voice called out to Eggle. But the other party didn't respond, and the shadowy figure above him even began to laugh sorrowfully. The Count controls them and can bring Eggle back from the underworld as long as he doesn't block Elsa's betrothal. So which of these women you care about are you going to choose? The woman bared her slim ankles and lifted her feet to walk slowly towards the man. She hurriedly covered her body. How could the man she missed so much be here? Yu was at a loss for words. I just came in not long ago. I didn't know you were taking a bath. Elsa looked at him and laughed happily, completely ignoring the wiping of her wet hair. A dark shadow suddenly appeared behind her, warning her that the Lord knew that she could have a big atmosphere. However, Yao is very excited. I came with Eggle to look for you. She's downstairs now. But Elsa suddenly changed her face, and in a hard tone tried to drive them away. Although she could do nothing about her situation, she still didn't want her friends to worry about her. The ring was just a souvenir. I didn't think you'd find it. But she left the school without a word. She has serious and unspeakable reasons. She's going to marry that man, so she won't have to worry about them anymore, and she'll have all the riches and honor in the world. However, you didn't believe it for a second, because he actually saw Aisha shedding tears of pain. She hurriedly looked down and wiped away her tears, knowing that she had tried so hard to hold back the. Yu sighed helplessly. When did she become so condescending? He stroked Elsa's cheek, and to fool others he had to fool himself first. And my dear Miss Elsa, you're such a bad actress. What's going on? Elsa states that it's all her fault. She shouldn't have let Eggle give him the ring so that they might not come looking for it. But the Lord Aisha is talking about is the one who rules the demon race above the demon emperor. You don't understand the horror of that Lord. He's the true and powerful ruler behind the demons, and there's no way she's with them. The Chimera's instinct is to suck the life out of humans, even though she's a half-blood Chimera. It's only when she has an intimate relationship that she sucks the life out of the other person. Yu smiled unconcernedly. So what if you are a Chimera? Demon or human? But as far as I'm concerned, my Elsa is Elsa, and there's no changing that. As for the Lord and all that, will you come with us now and get out of here? Aisha's cheeks blushed slightly as she held out her hand. Just as she was about to try and respond to Yu's question, the wall clock suddenly chimed at full time, and the sound was indeed loud throughout the room. I didn't expect the clock in the parlor to clang and ring, and all of a sudden the whole castle was running. Lilith mused darkly, surprised that it was already 12 o'clock. Eggle couldn't sit still any longer. What was this woman in front of him talking about? At 10 minutes past midnight, the moon is gradually covered by dark clouds. The surroundings of the castle suddenly became incredibly eerie, and the subordinates took cover. Yu, however, was unusually excited in his room. It was always such a pleasure to spend time with the beautiful Elsa, but Elsa was running around in a hurry. She had to get changed or everyone would be in danger. You could only obediently turn around and ask her what was going on with his head full of questions. But there's no time to explain. All he needs to know is that he's in for a fight, so he didn't talk too much. After all, as a man he should protect the woman he liked. I didn't realize that Elsa was so handsome, standing there calmly like a female general issuing orders. Sure enough, Yao was instantly attracted to her. His face flushed red as he froze in place, apparently not explaining too much. Elsa got up and moved forward to lead Yu towards the door. At this moment, Yu suddenly grabbed her wrist, but one hand quietly went behind her back and took out something. He gently puts it on the woman and nods with satisfaction after a closer look. This jade bracelet is useful for people with ice magic, and I thought at the time that it would be perfect for you, Elsa. Sure enough, she thanked Yu. She did like any gift he gave her, and the jade bracelet won't wilt like a rose, which I think is great. She walked shyly and quickly to the door. After all, she had to hurry to turn to Eggle. I didn't realize that just after I opened the door, there was a gust of white smoke coming from outside the door. Yu looked around in confusion. Where the hell did this thing come from? The corridor was in a state of pandemonium, but there was not a sound in the large castle. Only white smoke slowly drifted away and was accompanied by a hollow inquiry as to where this place was. So Elsa hastened to explain that this is the labyrinth of the heart created by my stepfather, whose natural magic is world replacement. No wonder, even though the world shifted, you didn't notice any signs of the realm being opened. So this was a space. But you didn't have time to think about it. This labyrinth of the heart aside. But Eggle was still downstairs. Now we have to find Eggle. Do you know the general layout of the labyrinth? Elsa lowered her head guiltily and was just about to admit that she wasn't sure when she suddenly felt something was wrong. So she turned sharply to look over, and her expression became uncontrollably frightened. Ahead, within the white smoke, a dark figure was slowly walking towards Elsa. Apparently Elsa wasn't going to sit around and wait for her to die, and drew her ice sword in a handsome manner, intending to meet the battle. You obediently stood next to the beautiful woman, all waiting for that lord to arrive. I didn't realize it was her mother, Lilith, who had come to remind her that it was 12 o'clock. She reminded her daughter in a hard tone that it was time for you to go to your room and go to bed, or you know what's going to happen. Elsa humbly lowered her ice sword, looking incredibly uncomfortable but unable to refute her mother's. At that moment you suddenly stretched out his hand to try to stop it. After all, with him there was no way he would allow Aisha to be harmed. But Lilith grinned sinisterly, not caring about Yu's movement forward. After preparing herself for what she was about to face, Elsa whispered an apology to her opponent. I hadn't expected her to apologize to her mother, causing Lilith's eyes to widen in sudden and overwhelming dismay. Aisha raised her ice sword and looked grave. I've decided to face it together with you. Not only does she have to face it with her friend, but she has to escape this suffocating prison together. Yu was calm on the outside but incredibly excited on the inside. The serious Aisha is really cute, yet she was still persuading her mother to let go. After all, she and her father had been so deeply in love even back then. But all that awaited her was the speedy attack of a concealed weapon, which instantly passed by her ear. Lilith understood precisely why she didn't want her daughter to make the same mistake. Humans were still too fragile. But why does Mother Superior always secretly miss her deceased father late at night? Lilith froze in place, surprised that her daughter had discovered her deep secret. Elsa says it's a matter with her mother, so let her settle it herself. Lilith actually gathered her energy angrily, and countless ice picks waited behind her for the attack. She had warned her own daughter to go to bed when it was late, but Aisha didn't want to compromise and swung the ice sword in her hand with the intention of fending it off. Sure enough, the huge barrier instantly shattered countless ice picks, and Yu, as a man, even hid behind her. Lilith looked at her daughter in shock, having taken her ice pick with ease. Although it wasn't her full strength, normally that level just now should have been enough to make her fall to the ground, but the bracelet on his daughter's hand was actually a cold jade bracelet that could be called an ice divine artifact. Lilith pondered how she got this when her daughter's voice rang out from across the room. Mother, if you insist on stopping us, then I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. So she too manifested a powerful ice pick, intending to meet her mother's subsequent surefire blow. But Lilith confidently evoked a sneer. How, my dear silly daughter, you haven't forgotten that your mother, I'm a chimera born of pure blood, only to see the energy around her explode, and two wings grew out of her back. She stood still after her evil incarnation, looking down with scorn at the stupidly stupid duo below her. I never had the chance before, but today I'll show you the true power of our phantom. Mother-sama really did intend to take your side, and Aisha could only bear it all through gritted teeth. Yu's gaze began to turn serious. Dare to let his woman get hurt, then don't blame him for being rude. By now, the white smoke has enveloped the entire castle. Eggle looked around confused with his weapon in hand. Where the hell are you and Elsa now? How is it that when the bells stopped, the parlor became this shithole and Lilith was gone? Apparently she can't be thinking yet. A million bats have appeared on her upper right side. Eggle looked up momentarily, and the castle had become so strange for a moment. But the man's voice rang out, and how could there be a little mouse in his own labyrinth? She looked at the man in sudden shock, and her expression actually began to tense when she felt the dangerous energy. But the man says, don't be alarmed. Lovely Miss Mouse, welcome to the labyrinth of his heart. He is the supreme master of this place, the most powerful energizer of all time. Polstered, smoke is rising slowly from the corridor on the first floor. Lilith looked towards the two who were trying to escape. With one easy blow they would surely die. But Yu waved his hand helplessly, indicating that Mother-sama had misunderstood. In fact, he didn't belong to humans, but now it was too late for them to beg for mercy. But before it was his turn to, she slowly looked over at her baby girl, who was indeed standing there in some fear. So she flew forward in an instant, stating that she had to discipline her rebellious daughter before she could do anything about it. Aisha raised her ice sword in advance after she was ready for it. She quickly charged forward as well. After all, she wasn't going to succumb to anyone again. Yu sighed helplessly. Why don't you guys just listen to me finish my sentence? But they were already charging towards each other. one purple, one blue, one good and one evil. Lilith held out her hand to gather her gift magic, intending to teach her unaware daughter a lesson. Aisha's icicle attack didn't hurt in the slightest, only to see her mother easily stand her ground against the. She was furious for a moment, her face fierce as she contemplated her next plan, so she used her energy to instantly jump above her and quickly leaned down and raised her ice sword towards her mother. But when she was about to touch her mother, she realized that the person in front of her had fled the place as a black shadow. Elsa was in a state of dread, and shuddered to think what she was about to face. Sure enough, Mother suddenly appeared with a disdainful face. "I'll never give you a chance to sneak up on me." Too late! She quickly dodged in front of her daughter and lifted her hand to strangle her with force. You walked around below helplessly. What the hell was he going to do to save Aisha? He had to look up and gaze above him and keep thinking of a perfect plan. Sylph said she was very puzzled. Why didn't Master just go and help Sister Elsa? You, however, became incredibly devastated. Lilith might be his future mother-in-law. It would be bad if she didn't hit him hard enough. But then again, how do we get out of here with all this smoke? Apparently, in the presence of these things, Elsa could not think of. As she looked down in confusion, her body felt like it was them flying upwards. But as she watched, she realized that they were falling fast. Lilith was in a good mood at this point, explaining that's why this could be called the Count's greatest labyrinth. Aisha quietly opened her eyes to look around the labyrinth after she felt the drop. But the white smoke in front of us is so thick that it makes you afraid for no reason at all. So she instantly conjured up an ice sword, intending to surprise her mother. Sure enough, Lilith immediately noticed her daughter's movements, but at the moment it was to no avail. I didn't realize that Elsa's sharp swing of the ice sword had left her mother with no choice but to let go of her hand. But Elsa had no intention of fighting her mother, and had already dashed quickly to the other side of the room. At this point, the castle has become a labyrinth of weirdness to outsiders. Unexpectedly, as the smoke was blown away, it revealed its true horror. The evil, big-mouthed cannibal flower. Rows and rows of armored soldiers with weapons in their hands, as if waiting for their masters to issue orders. Lilith swung her wings to catch up and began to think as her body landed smoothly and slowly. It's the first time she's been in here, and based on where she's been, she can't be far. But even if you leave here, where can you escape to? If you still decide to leave, then only endless despair and misery await you. But at that moment the white mist grew thicker and thicker, as if it were trying to surround the creature. Lilith was still persuading her to be obedient. After all, he was going to show up next. A silly child. Aisha, who was called a silly child, had already been secretly looking around, searching for a way out. Just then a black tentacle rushed over and instantly wrapped her ankle around. Aisha looked down with a bad feeling, and as expected, she was caught. She stood frozen in place, looking fearfully at the wildly swaying tentacles in front of her. As expected, she did not resist at all, and her body was instantly entangled by countless tentacles. A man appeared here and walked slowly. Elsa looked at the man in front of her, her eyes instantly becoming overwhelmed with shock. The man's gaze was cold as he looked at her, and he had caught another little mouse yet. This man is a liar. A woman will lose her soul and personality if she marries an adult. Apparently her words displeased the man. The tentacles around his body even instantly tensed. He'd scared in displeasure. It's true that bitches have no other ability but to talk too much. But Aisha is still unconscious, unable to know the situation of Yao. The Count looked downwards without any comment. You have to do this deal anyway. Don't blame me for not reminding you. There's no escaping from the labyrinth of my heart. But what's happening to the man below? Why is there a suffocating pressure? I only saw you snort coldly, but the thick smoke surrounding his body turned into strange energy. His gaze instantly became serious, easily evoking his fourth seal. Unexpectedly, the energy around him changed instantly, and the energy was instantly absorbed after he unsealed it. The Count was afraid of death, but he was terrified that he still had a plan. Obviously impossible. A human would never be able to release this kind of pressure. This guy is not human at all. He must get out of here. Cannot wait a moment. The Count threw his captives down as he ran away. So Yao reached out helplessly to pick up the two beauties before he could do anything about it. Lilith is still conscious. She apologized to you that she did wrong, but she pleaded for you's help. She must take Elsa out of here safely. You soothed her gently, and then said that not only would he take Aisha away, but you would be safe as well. He doted on Aisha and looked at her sideways. As for that Count who was afraid of death, I will make him regret coming to this world. The Count of fear of death had already reached the periphery, and a red hole appeared above him. As long as he gets out of the hole, he'll seal off the labyrinth of the heart. No matter how strong that monster is, it can't escape from him. While he was still feeling pleased with himself, you had already launched his skill to slash at him, and after a huge collision of energies, after the huge energy collision, the Count spat out blood uncontrollably, and his expression suddenly changed to disheveled. How could this happen? In my heart's labyrinth, I am the strongest being. If I'm not mistaken, his power has already exceeded the threshold of this world. But you was already furious and stared at him with growing indifference. The Count thought he was the strongest being in the world, but he shivered at the sight of him. So he decided not to sit back and wait for death, and instantly transformed into a shadowy doppelganger to attack the man. As long as he had the other three, he could replace his original body at will. He didn't believe that the man alone could defeat all four of them. However, the world is unpredictable. As an earl, there is also a day when he was slapped in the face. He looked at the man fiercely, but he didn't dare to resist anymore. Fruitful, you instantly flashed to his side. I've got you. You can't run away. The Count was really terrified. He was trembling and begging the man not to do it. After all, he still has some contacts in the underworld. If he died, that little lover's soul. But Yao interrupted his explanation and reminded him in a hard tone that he had no choice. Aegir is not my mistress either. Don't misunderstand her innocence. After that, he raised the Count again. The energy around him suddenly enlarged. It's just as well that I know someone in the underworld. This power is the same as the one that first appeared and trampled the demon emperor under his feet. Is it the power of the world's origin? It's the first time he's faced fear at such a close distance. Kojou Yusuke shouted at Havis in displeasure. His remaining patience was about to run out. He instantly grabbed the Count with all his might and swung him up with ease. Then he threw him down heavily, yelling at him to show himself or face the consequences. At that moment, in the upper part of the castle, the hard walls began to crumble due to the powerful energy. The Count was mercilessly thrown to the ground, his body unable to move. He looked upwards, calmly, and wondered if Harvey's was the Lord. Apparently only his eyes could move, and he had really spotted the movement in front of him, only to see the ground out of a pair of big hands, hard to break the cracks in the ground. After the big hands easily broke open the ground, a black shadow quickly appeared inside. As the big hands continued to rise, the surroundings suddenly became eerie. Unexpectedly, a man was sitting in the center of the hand with a handsome pose. The change that happened in front of him made the Count sit up despite the pain. I didn't realize that Hades, the king of the underworld, had actually descended. However, as the fog gradually dissipated, the king of the underworld only saw the man standing in front of him, but he showed a hint of displeasure and faintly asked him what he was doing. It was rumored that Havis had a tyrannical temperament, and what this guy did just now had already angered him. Something that made the Earl's teeth drop in shock happened. The king of the underworld even ran to the man and pampered him. I haven't seen you for thousands of years. Who would have thought that you'd be so mean to me right away? The Earl was so scared of death that he froze in place. His head was full of questions, but he didn't have any answers. Yu helplessly looked at the king of the underworld. Don't make a fuss, there is something I want to ask for your help. Havis grinned. You have something to ask me for help. So he quickly found Aegir and then quickly came to Harvis. Can you please put this human soul back into his body? Harvey's was puzzled and came forward. Surely it is possible, but I have a question. Why do you have to save an ordinary person? You said no, because she is my most cherished friend, a rare and good friend, and that's all I have. Harvey's was so disgusted that he was speechless. So after he eased his mood, since that's the case, that's perfectly fine, but I want to have a night of sex with you. You raised the prison fire in his hand, and Hades instantly commiserated. I'm happy to be able to do you a favor. So Harvey's took out the chatterbox book. The great Lord Harvey's, actually so glamorous. Apparently Harvey's has no sense. Let it scan that body, searching for a soul to match it. At this point, the book obediently shut up, fully demonstrated their invincible ability. Suddenly Harvey's eyes a beat, seems to have found something. Sure enough, a person's name appeared on the book, with Egel's name written on it. It seemed to be her, so a quill appeared in his hand. As soon as the pen touched the book, her name disappeared into it. Aegir came to her senses, not realizing how powerful the Hades was. Aegir looked around in confusion, not knowing what was going on. But behind her, You couldn't wait and called out to Aegir, so she quickly turned around and looked at the man in front of her with disbelief, only to see her suddenly become incredibly aggrieved. Glutinous response to the man. You happily opened his hand to welcome Angel's return. Unexpectedly, Angel had already quickly moved forward, holding his face and kissing him down. In the last second before she died, her mind was all about him. Until that moment, she didn't understand her own heart. She looked happily at the man in front of her. The love in her heart was just crying out to be heard. She thought she had already died. She might as well confess now. It doesn't matter if he likes her or not. She gently touched Yu's cheek. He should have realized her feelings. Right, but you think she's expressing the reunion of her best friend in such a passionate way. She angrily accuses the pervert. He's ruining the good atmosphere. Hades opened his mouth to stop the two. Hurry back inside the body. Don't delay for so long. Apparently Aegir hadn't reacted yet, and asked who Hades was, but then she found her body. Her eyes instantly widened round. She gnawed on her fingers in fear. It was her own body. She couldn't calm down at all. But you explained that it was his own carelessness that brought Hades to resurrect you. Egil was shocked and pondered. It was hard to understand all these words together. By chance, she realized that she had found out. You! Who are you? So you had to explain, did not intentionally hide from them. She looked at him suspiciously. She didn't look scared at all. In fact, I'm the one you humans are afraid of. The first apostle, Yusuf. After revealing his heart, he waited for the woman's questioning, but she burst out laughing, which puzzled him. She laughed even more freely, showing that she didn't believe the man's nonsense. I never thought that the supreme first apostle would be a pervert like you. But Aegir was not afraid at all, and even came closer to him. Then she happily raised her smile and expressed her sincere gratitude to the man in front of her. Yu was also impressed by her smile and shyly looked back at the woman. Hades impatiently walked forward, wanting to completely interrupt the two of them. Can't you guys finish resurrecting before you talk? Your bodies are getting cold.